Chapter 517. The most famous thing about the ancient desolate forbidden zone was the peerless array hidden deep underground. That array could suppress any expert that entered the ancient desolate forbidden zone. It was obvious how powerful it was. However, other than that, no one knew that the array could be controlled. Looking at Tuoba Shang's cold expression, they knew that the peerless array hidden deep in the ancient desolate forbidden zone was not as simple as suppressing one's strength. Have the 7 major factions never thought about why the barbarian tribe chose the ancient desolate forbidden zone as the location for the final battle? Tuoba Shang's voice was hoarse with a hint of sarcasm. His gaze swept across the geniuses of the 7 major factions, as if he was looking at a row of corpses. The geniuses of the 7 major factions changed their expressions. Even Yi Guqin's gaze turned deep. He had previously thought that the reason why the barbarian tribe chose the ancient desolate forbidden zone was because of one reason. There was only one reason, and that was that the ancient desolate forbidden zone had a great formation that suppressed the strength of experts. This could, to a large extent, prevent the experts from the 2 factions from secretly killing the experts. This was because if these experts entered, their strength would be suppressed and they would face the risk of dying. The 4 elders of the Shinto family were living examples. Not only Yi Guqin, but many of the experts of the 7 major factions also had the same thought. That was why they did not object. However, it seemed that the situation was not that simple. Haha, I have to say that you are really naive. The ancient desolate forbidden zone is an ancient battlefield of the barbarian tribe. We naturally know more secrets than you. The elders of the 5 Elements Temple already knew that the peerless array in the ancient desolate forbidden zone could be activated. To control the array, an array disk was needed. That was why I paid a price to obtain this array disk. Now it will be your time of death. Tuoba Shang's expression was cold. The reason why he said so much was because he thought that all the people of the 7 major factions were destined to die. They actually have such a trump card? Not only were the people of the 7 major factions shocked, but most of the barbarian tribe people were also in the dark. They only understood now. However, most of the barbarian tribe saints and saintesses had cold smiles on their faces. Obviously, they wanted to see this scene. Only the saints and saintesses of the peace faction, led by Mu Lanyue, had ugly expressions. Although this had nothing to do with their safety. However, if all the heavens favorites of the 7 forces were to die here, how furious would the 7 forces be? At that time, there would be no room for negotiation. It would be a battle of life and death. If the experts of the 7 great powers were to come out in full force, then besides the 5-element temple that could guarantee their safety, which of the other powers could guarantee that they wouldn't suffer heavy losses? It could be said that this was a crazy gamble. He's too reckless. If he makes the wrong move, the barbarian race will be in deep trouble. Mu Lanyue's pretty face was filled with anxiety. However, she knew that she couldn't stop the crazy Tuoba Shang. What should we do? Let's run. Some of the sky prides from the 7 major forces panicked. If Tuoba Shang really activated this peerless array, not to mention these divine soul realm sky prides, even life and death chamber experts might not be able to survive. I've just obtained the will of life and death. How can I die here? Zhou Tong's face was as gloomy as water. Previously, he had been targeting Yi Guqin and didn't care about the barbarian race at all. At this critical moment, even if he had the will of life and death, it would be difficult for him to break through. Not only him, but Xian Hao, the young war emperor, and the others also looked extremely solemn. A cold light flashed across Gu Zun's somewhat dazed eyes. Looking at the sky prides from the 7 major forces who were running around like headless flies, Tuoba Shang shook his head slightly. His bloodstained smile looked extremely creepy. Don't even think about escaping. No matter how fast you are, can you be faster than me when I activate the array? Tuoba Shang's eyes were filled with mockery. Most of the sky prides from the 7 major forces had ashen faces. Even Yan Wushuang and the others gritted their teeth. They had no other choice at this moment. TSK, looks like we don't have to do anything. Golden Sun Saint and the others smiled and shook their heads. Lei Jiuyo looked at Yi Guqin with a hint of unwillingness. Since 5 Crown Kings' identity had been exposed, it wouldn't be easy for Lei Jiuyo to deal with Yi Guqin. However, in the end, Tuo Bashang still looked at Yi Guqin, the mockery in his eyes thickening. Quintuple Crown King, do you think you can stay out of this? You're part of this. As soon as Tuo Bashang finished speaking, the people from the Berserker tribe were shocked. What? Tuo Bashang wants to kill 5 Crown King? That's our barbarian race's 5 Crown King. Some barbarian saints and saintesses were hesitant. Although 5 Crown King was wearing blood-red armor, they were already certain that Yi Guqin was from the barbarian race. These barbarian saints and saintesses naturally didn't want 5 Crown King to die. Tuo Bashang is crazy. He's even going to kill 5 Crown King to get rid of his enemies. Mulanua clenched her fists. It was obvious that Tuo Bashang's killing intent towards 5 Crown King had reached its peak. 5 Crown King, you've just appeared out of nowhere and are about to die. If you have any last words, just say them. Tuo Bashang's blood-stained lips curled into a smile. His smile was carefree and comfortable. When Yi Guqin had appeared, the 5 primogeniture totems had suppressed him and put Tuo Bashang in a difficult position. However, the one facing death now was 5 Crown King. Is our barbarian race's 5 Crown King going to die as soon as he appeared? Many barbarian saints and saintesses sighed. Only Lei Jiuyo and the others snickered. They were happy to see this. It should be enough. Yi Guqin ignored Tuo Bashang and looked at the 5 elemental sacred fruit in his hand. Since you don't have any last words, then die. Seeing that Yi Guqin didn't respond, Tuo Bashang's eyes turned colder. He had poured almost all of his totem power into the array disc. Even so, he could only activate the array for a short period of time, and could only use 1/10 of its full power. Heavenly Barbarian Slaughtering Array, Killing Array, open! Tuo Bashang roared and raised the array disc high. In an instant, the entire area around the barren ancient fighting ring shone brightly. It was as if countless barbarians and savage beasts had appeared, and were roaring in the sky. At the same time, a terrifying totem power burst out from the ground, as if it was about to break out. Outside the barren ancient forbidden zone, the top powers of the 7 forces sensed that something was wrong when they saw Tuo Bashang activating the array disc. When the Heavenly Barbarian Slaughtering Array was activated, the top powers of the 7 forces were shocked. Damn it, it's an Earth-grade array. The top powers of the 7 forces were furious. Arrays were divided into 3 grades: Heaven, Earth, and Mortal. Earth-grade array, even if it was an inferior Earth-grade array, was enough to deal with the Heaven and Earth spiritual bridge and spiritual dwelling realm experts. Barbarians, you deserve to die. The top powers of the 7 forces were furious and wanted to enter the barren ancient forbidden zone. After all, the top powers of the 7 forces were gathered in the barren ancient fighting ring. If they were all killed by the Heavenly Barbarian Slaughtering Array, it would be a great loss to the 7 forces. It might even cause a gap in the top powers of the generation, and cause them to decline. Ho ho, do you want to violate the agreement? We have an agreement that the top powers of the 2 camps are not allowed to interfere with the battle in the barbarian tribe. Many top powers of the barbarian tribe stepped out to stop them. Tuoba Outyin took a few steps forward and blocked the path of the top powers of the 7 forces as he said coldly, "Barbarian tribe, are you trying to start an endless war?" The Flame Emperor of the 3 imperial palaces shouted coldly. Zhou Tong and the young War Emperor were among them. This is a battle between the younger generation. If you want to interfere, we will not stand by and do nothing. Tuoba Outyin sneered. Most of the top powers of the barbarian tribe also took action and blocked the path of the top powers of the 7 forces. Only Mirambo and the others sighed in their hearts. If this enmity were to be formed, it would truly be an irreconcilable enmity. The top powers of the 7 forces had ugly expressions on their faces. With the top powers of the barbarian tribe blocking them, they could not help in time. Tuo Bashang had already activated the Heavenly Barbarian Slaughtering Array, and they could not make it in time. All the sect leaders and elders of the 7 forces had dark expressions on their faces. Compared to the anger of the top powers in the desolate ancient arena were in despair. This is an Earth rank array. We can't escape and we can't fight back. Some of the top powers shook their heads and smiled bitterly. Are we going to die here today? Yin Wushuang's face turned pale. She was not afraid of death, but when death approached her, she could feel her heart trembling. Yi Guqin, I'm glad that you didn't come. Yin Wushuang smiled sadly. Zither Fairy, who had fainted, slowly woke up. When she saw the scene in front of her, she understood what had happened. Zither Fairy was not afraid of death, but it was a pity that she could not see him one last time. Zhou Tong's eyes flickered. He had once colluded with the barbarian tribe's saint, and he was related to some of them. If he begged them, they might let him live. However, if he begged the barbarian tribe now, the image that Zhou Tong had created would be completely destroyed. On one side, it was a mask and an image. On the other side, it was his life. Zhou Tong's eyes showed a hint of struggle. However, when he felt the power of the heavenly barbarian slaughtering array increasing, Zhou Tong made up his mind. He gritted his teeth and stepped forward. Friends of the barbarian tribe, you don't have to be so ruthless. I haven't killed many of my fellow barbarian tribe members. As soon as he said that, the geniuses of the 7 major forces were all stunned. Chapter 518. Even after the heavenly barbarian slaughtering array was activated, the geniuses of the 7 major forces only felt despair, but they didn't beg for mercy. Zhou Tong was the first. Zhou Tong actually begged for mercy. Lowering his head to the barbarian race, how can he say such words? Most of the geniuses showed disdain in their eyes. They had acknowledged Zhou Tong's character before. But obviously, when Zhou Tong begged for mercy, all the positive images he had created had collapsed. Although he wasn't unpardonable, his image was completely destroyed. Zither Fairy's beautiful eyes looked at Zhou Tong with faint disgust. To think that when she found out that Zhou Tong was risking his life to save LV Qinghan, she felt a trace of guilt in her heart. But now, it seemed that Zhou Tong had really saved LV Qinghan. Zither Fairy wasn't stupid. Zhou Tong's current actions made people feel that his previous actions were extremely fake. Zhou Tong, you're one of the geniuses of the 7 major forces. How can you say such words? Yin Wushuang shouted, her eyes spitting fire. Indeed, she was afraid of death, but this didn't mean that she would lower her head to Tuoba Shang. Feeling the strange gazes around him, they were puzzled, disappointed, and doubtful. Zhou Tong's eyes were slightly gloomy, but he didn't regret it. I'm going to lose my life. Are you going to curse me in the underworld? Zhou Tong said coldly. He had already obtained the life and death intent. As long as he had enough time, he could refine it and become a life and death chamber expert. How could Zhou Tong be willing to die now? I think young Master Zhou is right. We don't have to fight to the death. Another person spoke. It was Ren Tingting of Consonance Palace. She came to Zhou Tong's side with an understanding smile on her face. Ren Tingting was doing this because she was afraid of death. Secondly, she wanted to curry favor with Zhou Tong. Miss Ren is indeed righteous. Zhou Tong smiled. With Ren Tingting's support, a small number of prodigies also gradually stood beside Zhou Tong, their faces alternating between green and white. Limitless Sword Sects Xian Feng, Xian Dai, and Murong Ditian. Saint Origin Academy's Princess Yuan Shi, Mo Lengia, and Feng Chen all stood with Zhou Tong and the others. Right now, the heavens favorites of the 7 forces were divided into 2 factions. Those heavens prides who did not join Zhou Tong's side were all furious. At this juncture of life and death, not only did they not band together to make a final resistance, but they also did not do so. Instead, it was his own internal strife that made the barbarian race a laughing stock. Watching Xian Feng, Xian Dai, and the others leave, Xian Hao frowned slightly, but he didn't say anything. The little war emperor of the 3 imperial palaces held the conqueror halberd and frowned. He seemed to be deep in thought. As for Saber Maniac Prime Sovereign, he was in a daze from start to finish, as if he didn't feel the impending doom. This scene made the elites of the 7 factions feel humiliated. Outside the ancient desolation forbidden zone, the experts of the barbarian tribe who saw the scene laughed and said, "There are indeed people with discerning eyes among the 7 forces. A wise man submits to circumstances." Although that was what he said, everyone could hear the mockery in his words. On the other hand, the Flame Emperor's face was extremely cold. Zhou Tong's action simply threw away all of the three imperial palaces' face. However, Zhou Tong was the disciple of Ling Huang. Even if the Flame Emperor was angry, there was nothing he could do. Now the experts of the 7 factions could only watch helplessly. With the experts of the barbarian tribe around, there was no way they could rescue those heaven's prides in time. Moreover, Tuobashang was controlling the heavenly barbarian slaughtering spiritual array. If those experts were to enter the array, their cultivation would be suppressed and they would be killed. That would be a great loss. Sigh, I hope the heavens will protect us. Some of the experts of the 7 factions sighed. At the ancient desolation ring, looking at Zhou Tong and the others who lowered their heads, the saints and saintesses of the barbarian tribe sneered. Only Lei Jiuyo, Golden Sun Saint Sun, and the others looked at Zhou Tong with flickering eyes. Zhou Tong had actually contacted them privately. It was Zhou Tong who had contacted them during the battle in the valley. Therefore, if possible, Lei Jiuyo was willing to spare Zhou Tong and the others' lives. Tuobashang, a wise man, submits to circumstances. These people are quite sensible. It's not a bad idea to let them go. Lei Jiuyo stood out and said, Indeed. Golden Sun Saint Sun agreed. Hearing that, Tuobashang sneered. He knew that Zhou Tong was probably related to Lei Jiuyo and the others. Otherwise, Lei Jiuyo and the others would not have spoken up for him. In addition, Zhou Tong had never offended Tuobashang. Thus, Tuobashang could let them go. However, would it be so simple? Humph, since Lei Jiuyo and the rest have pleaded for you. It is not that I cannot let you off. You only need to do one thing for me. Kneel down and submit. Tuobashang held the array disc in his hand and shouted coldly. Zhou Tong and the others' faces turned ugly. However, Zhou Tong gritted his teeth and half knelt down. Ren Tingting also knelt down in humiliation. Queen Yuanxi's face turned pale. She was the queen of a country, and now she had to kneel down to the barbarian tribe. However, she did not think much of it and knelt down directly. Compared to her dignity, her life was more important. I, Yan Wushuang, do not want to be associated with you. Yan Wushuang's body trembled. The rest of the supreme talents were also cursing. You are the same as them. If you kneel down and surrender, I may spare your lives if I am in a good mood. Tuobashang sneered. He enjoyed the feeling of being in a commanding position and intimidating everyone. None of the other Sky Prides stepped forward. However, all of them looked as if they were ready to die. And you, 5 Crown King, if you kneel down and submit to me and give me the 5 primogenitor totems, I might spare your life. Tuobashang looked at Yi Guchen with a playful gaze. However, Yi Guchen did not seem to hear him, and continued to play with the 5 elements sacred fruit in his hand. He knew that Tuobashang was joking. He and Tuobashang were already at an impasse. There was no way he would spare Tuobashang. Tuobashang's face turned cold when he saw Yi Guchen's indifferent attitude. All right. 5 Crown King, I would like to see if you can withstand the attack of an Earth Great Array Disc. Tuobashang raised the array disc and activated the power of the totems. With a loud boom, the surroundings of the ancient desolate arena trembled violently. The heavenly barbarian slaughtering array was fully activated. Along with the smell of gunpowder, there seemed to be barbarian shadows riding ancient beasts and wielding long spears emerging from the ground. They charged toward Yi Guchen and the other supreme talents who had yet to surrender. Those ancient barbarian shadows had extremely powerful auras. With a single charge, some of the Divine Soul Realm Supreme Talents' bodies were torn apart. Blood splattered everywhere. Fight to the death. There were also unyielding Supreme Talents from the 7 major forces who roared at the top of their lungs. The Little War Emperor, Xianhao Guzun, Yan Wushuang, and the others all made their moves. Even so, how could they resist the power of an Earth Great Array Disc? Even though the heavenly barbarian slaughtering array could only unleash 1/10 of its power under Tuobashang's control, it was still far from what these Divine Soul Realm Supreme Talents could resist. Bang! 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 One supreme talent after another exploded under the barbarian shadow's attacks. Not even a complete corpse was left. The scene was extremely tragic. The smell of blood filled the air. Yan Wushuang and the others were in a killing frenzy. Many inner yard disciples were also injured or killed. Zither Fairy's lips were stained with blood. She knew that she would not be able to escape this calamity. The atmosphere in the barren ancient arena was tragic. Outside the barren ancient forbidden zone, the 7 major forces were lifeless. Most of the barbarians had smug smiles on their faces. Tuoba Outyin couldn't help but smile. He wanted to see his son cut down Quintuple Crown King in a graceful manner. Yi Guqin and Tuobashang faced off in the barren ancient arena. Tuobashang was smug when he saw the death he had caused. He looked at Yi Guqin again and said with a cold smile, 5 Crown King, are you ready to die? Yi Guqin chuckled and didn't say anything. He slowly turned around with one hand behind his back, and the other holding the 5 elements sacred fruit. Are you resigned to your fate? Tuobashang sneered when he saw Yi Guqin's posture. Sorry, you can't take my life. Yi Guqin took off a corner of his mask and swallowed the 5 elements sacred fruit. In an instant, an incomparably violent sacred medicine power exploded like a bomb. At the same time, an extremely vast spiritual energy spread wildly in Yi Guqin's body. The powerful energy that had been dormant in Yi Guqin's body for a long time finally showed its edge with the help of the sacred medicine. It was the 6 Paths Ashura Sword Array. Chapter 519. Yi Guqin had many trump cards up his sleeve throughout his cultivation journey. 10,000 Gods Tribulation, Reincarnation Sword Lotus, Pathos of Heaven, and so on were all extremely powerful moves. But apart from that, there was another trump card in Yi Guqin's body. It was a trump card that even Yi Guqin himself did not have the ability to use. It was the 6 Paths Azura Sword formation that Yi Guqin had obtained in the 18 Blood Prison. At that time, Yi Guqin had absorbed the 6 Paths Azura Sword formation into his body, while comprehending the Azura Sword intent. But the 6 Paths Azura Sword formation was an Earth-grade formation that could condense the formation spirit. With Yi Guqin's Qi refinement realm cultivation at that time, he could not use this formation at all. Even with Yi Guqin's divine soul realm cultivation, he could not use it either. Because an Earth-grade formation was a terrifying formation that could threaten the heaven and earth spiritual bridge, and even divine dwelling realm experts. If Yi Guqin wanted to take the initiative to use the Earth-grade formation, it was no different from an ant pulling a millstone. He could not do it at all. But it was different now, because Yi Guqin had consumed the 5 elements sacred fruit. This was a genuine panacea. Not to mention the Saint Origin dynasty, even in the entire South Horizon region, sacred medicine was rare, and not everyone could have it. And the sacred medicine's enormous medicinal power was also extremely vigorous, far surpassing that of a quasi-sacred medicine. Even the quasi-sacred pills that Yi Guqin had consumed in the past were far inferior to the current sacred medicine. One could imagine how vigorous the spiritual qi would be if such a powerful sacred medicine was directly swallowed into one's body without any preparation or preparation. This vigorous spiritual qi was the biggest driving force behind the 6 Paths Azura Sword formation. Yi Guqin felt the extremely abundant spiritual qi in his body that was about to explode, and could not help but let out a long howl. A howl moved the wind and clouds. Tuobashang was stunned. Mu Lanue, Long Nu, Lei Jioyo, and the rest of the barbarian race saints and saintesses were all stunned. 5 Crown King had actually directly swallowed a saint medicine? Everyone was in awe. Even the heaven's favorites from the 7 controlling forces were a little shocked. Sacred medicine was not something that could be casually consumed. If it was not properly refined, it would be no different from poison. That was because the unrefined power of the saint medicine was not something an ordinary person could withstand. As the saying goes, going too far is as bad as falling short. Haha, 5 Crown King, you're really desperate. You actually dared to consume the sacred medicine. Tuobashang laughed and shook his head, his eyes filled with mockery. He even felt that he didn't even need to make a move. 5 Crown King wouldn't be able to withstand it and self-destruct. Not only him, but even Lei Jioyo, the Golden Sun Saint Sun, and the others thought the same. Ai 5 Crown King, you were too reckless. Mu Lanue sighed deeply, her beautiful eyes filled with regret. He had thought that someone who could contend with Tuobashang had finally appeared. Yet now he had made such a foolish decision. Without even needing Tuo Bashang to do anything, he had already fallen into danger. At that moment, Yi Guchen's expression was solemn. The moment Yi Guchen swallowed the 5 elemental sacred fruit, he felt an extremely powerful and terrifying spirit qi erupt from his body. It contained a dense 5 elemental mystic power. An ordinary divine soul realm cultivator would definitely not be able to withstand this terrifying spirit qi. However, how could Yi Guchen's physical body be compared to an ordinary person's? His perfect physical body, flawless diamond body, 5 ancestor totems, and his current ancient god body, Yi Guchen's physical body could be said to be invincible in the same cultivation level. 5 ancestor totems out. Yi Guchen rotated the 5 ancestor totems in his body and refined the 5 elemental mystic power in the 5 elemental sacred fruit. He used the 5 elemental mystic power to expel the remaining blood-dissolving demonic poison from his body. At the same time, Yi Guchen channeled most of the remaining spirit qi into the 6 paths Azura sword formation in the depths of his body. In an instant, the 6 paths Azura sword formation that had been dormant in Yi Guchen's body started to vibrate as if it had been ignited. On the surface of Yi Guchen's body, blood-red lines began to spread gradually. These patterns were the 6 paths Azura sword formation's array patterns. These blood-red array patterns followed Yi Guchen's body and spread to the ground. In an instant, a terrifying aura erupted from Yi Guchen's body. Everyone stared blankly at Yi Guchen. They could still feel an extremely powerful spirit qi erupting from 5 Crown King's body. They even thought that 5 Crown King's body would not be able to withstand the sacred medicine's terrifying power. But now, what was erupting from Yi Guchen's body was not the sacred medicine's power. It was the power of an array. 6 paths Azura sword formation out. Yi Guchen let out a long and hoarse howl, as if he was an Azura from the 9 hells. An incomparably terrifying murderous aura erupted from Yi Guchen's body. At this moment, Tuo Bashang couldn't hide the shock in his eyes. Yi Guchen's body slowly rose into the air. He wasn't borrowing the power of the vermilion bird's wings to rise into the air. Instead, countless complicated blood-red array patterns spread out from beneath his feet. The complexity of the array was no less than the heavenly savage slaughtering array here. Those are array patterns. Mu Lanyue covered her mouth with her slender hand. Her beautiful eyes widened as she stared at the endless array patterns spreading beneath Yi Guchen's feet. This aura, it's an earth-grade array. The Dragon Lady was also inexplicably shocked. On the side of the 7 factions, Yan Wushuang and the others were even more shocked. They looked at 5 Crown King, who was slowly rising into the air, and covered in array patterns beneath his feet. Yan Wushuang's heart trembled violently. There's an earth-grade array imprinted in 5 Crown King's body. At this moment, Yan Wushuang wasn't the only one who was shocked. Whether it was the 7 factions or the barbarian race, everyone was speechless. At this moment, Yi Guchen was wearing the blood-red sky demon general armor, and standing on the 6 paths Azura sword formation. He was like a god of death that had emerged from the underworld. He had the power to control life and death. I control the 6 paths Azura blood. Yi Guchen stomped his foot on the blood-red array. In an instant, 100 blood-red flying swords appeared from the array and rose into the air. Each flying sword could instantly kill a divine soul realm prodigy. And this was only an incomplete power. Because even with the help of the sacred medicine, Yi Guchen could only use a portion of the 6 paths Azura sword formation's power. However, it was definitely enough to deal with the current situation. Kill. After Yi Guchen finished speaking, he used his finger as a sword and pointed at the air. The 100 flying swords seemed to be pulled by something as they broke through the air, splitting the sky and shaking the earth. The flying swords collided with the ancient barbarian race's shadow that had appeared from the heavenly barbarian spiritual slaughtering array. The remaining heavens prides of the 7 forces huddled together, feeling lucky to have survived a disaster. This is impossible. How could you have an earth rank array in your body? Tuo Bashang kept retreating, unable to hide the ferocious look on his face. I, Tuo Bashang, will not accept this. Tuo Bashang let out a long howl and poured all of his power into the formation plate with all of his might. In an instant, The heavenly barbarian spiritual slaughtering array operated even more crazily, and a ferocious aura spread out. Again, Tuobashang's eyes were blood-red. He hit his chest with his other hand. He spat out a mouthful of blood essence on the array disc. Roar! The array disc trembled violently. Then on the ground, a vast amount of ancient barbarian race's shadow appeared. In the end, it turned into a ferocious and terrifying giant beast that was as big as an ancient mountain. Oh no, it's the array spirit of the heavenly barbarian spiritual slaughtering array. Yen Wushuang and the others were shocked. The array spirit was the core of an earth rank array. Although the array spirit that Tuobashang had summoned with all his might was only a shadow and was very weak, it was still the array spirit. No one present could withstand the array spirit's attack. Oh, the array spirit? Yi Guchen's eyes were deep. At that moment, his physical body was also suffering a great impact. After all, it was an earth rank array. If it were an ordinary person, their physical body would have collapsed long ago. Yi Guchen's eyes were also filled with determination. So what if it's the array spirit? As soon as Yi Guchen finished speaking, he channeled all the power of the sacred medicine into the sword array. In an instant, the 100 flying swords gathered together, accompanied by a thick blood-red light. A ferocious figure that looked like an Asura appeared. Chapter 520. That blood-red figure looked similar to Yi Guchen, who was wearing the Sky Demon General armor. His body was covered in blood-red armor, but his face was as ferocious as an Asura demon. A terrifying murderous aura, and bloodthirsty aura were emitted from the figure. It was the spirit of the Six Paths Asura sword formation, the Asura demon spirit. I am the Asura demon spirit. Anyone under the Six Paths Asura will be killed without mercy. The Asura demon spirit slowly spoke in a hoarse voice that seemed to have come from the depths of hell. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone felt a chill run down their spines. The power of the Asura demon spirit was not something they could fight against. Tuobashang was completely speechless. His eyelids twitched, and the veins on his temples throbbed. He could no longer suppress the anger in his heart. Yi Guchen seemed to be Tuobashang's nemesis. No matter what Tuobashang did, Yi Guchen was able to restrain him. Even now, Tuobashang had used the heavenly barbarian spiritual slaughtering array with great difficulty. In the end, Yi Guchen immediately used the Six Paths Asura sword formation. Tuobashang was filled with hatred. He was filled with hatred. Since there was the Five Crown King, why was there a need for Tuobashang? Five Crown King, you must die today. The murderous intent in Tuobashang's heart seemed to have solidified. As he controlled the formation plate, the terrifying giant beast, which was the formation spirit of the heavenly barbarian slaughtering formation, let out a long roar that shook the mountains and rivers as it charged toward Yi Guchen. Asura demon spirit kill! Yi Guchen shouted coldly. The Asura demon spirit's murderous aura exploded. He reached out a hand and clenched it. The 108 blood-red flying swords gathered in his hand and formed a blood-red longsword covered with demonic runes. The Asura demon spirit held the blood-red longsword and collided with the heavenly barbarian beast. The entire ground seemed to tremble from the collision, and endless cracks spread out. The aura of heaven and earth was chaotic, and the ripples were shocking. All the sky prides paled slightly as they watched the two array spirits battle. It could be said that any spirit of the formation could easily defeat everyone here. At the same time, the two spirit arrays collided. Outside the forbidden zone of ancient desolation, the experts of the barbarian race were stunned. The joy on their faces seemed to have frozen. The joy on Tuoba Outyen's face completely froze. That Five Crown King actually possessed this sort of ability? All the experts of the barbarian race were startled and frowned. This Five Crown King is a berserker, but he's helping the people from the 7 great forces of power. I don't think so. It's probably because of the grudge between Five Crown King and Tuobashang. Didn't you see that Tuobashang wanted to kill him? Some people from the barbarian race began to discuss among themselves. Tuoba Outyen's expression was extremely gloomy. Melambo breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. But he couldn't help but think even more highly of this mysterious quintuple crown king. An earth rank array formation was not something that anyone could possess. On the other hand, the 7 major forces felt like they had just survived a disaster. Many people breathed a sigh of relief in their hearts. How shameful. The sky prides of the 7 major forces actually needed the barbarian race's 5 crown king to save them in the end. Some experts blushed with shame. Inside the ancient desolate arena, the 2 spirit arrays continued to battle, their auras shocking. However, one thing was for sure. The Azura demon spirit was definitely not weaker than the sky barbarian beast. The sky prides of the 7 major forces were slightly nervous, but more of them breathed a sigh of relief. Zhou Tong, Ren Tingting, and the others' expressions were extremely ugly. Damn it. If 5 Crown King had a countermeasure, why didn't he use it earlier? Zhou Tong secretly gritted his teeth and clenched his fists. Extreme anger and unwillingness rose in his heart. If Yi Guqin had used the Earth Rank Array formation earlier, Zhou Tong naturally wouldn't have to kneel and lose face. But now, as soon as they knelt, Yi Guqin used a countermeasure. This made Zhou Tong so angry that he felt like vomiting blood. He looked at Yi Guqin with a gloomy gaze. While the 2 spirit arrays were fighting, Yi Guqin didn't stay idle. This was because he knew that the array disk was the source of everything. As long as the array disk was destroyed, the Sky Barbarian Spiritual Slaughtering Array would naturally disperse. Yi Guqin's eyes shot out a cold light. He no longer held back and directly took out the Blood Hell Sword. A ferocious sword with torrential vermilion bird flames swept towards Tuobashang. This sword was supported by the Fire Sword intent and was extremely powerful. Tuobashang's expression changed slightly. He also took out the 4-beast golden body again. The 4 totem spirits circled around him and turned into a wheel to resist Yi Guqin's attack. However, Yi Guqin had swallowed the 5 elements sacred fruit at this moment. His understanding of the 5 elements had deepened. In addition to Yi Guqin's illuminated sword heart, this was the best opportunity to comprehend the sword intent. I'll use you as a whetstone to comprehend the sword intent. Yi Guqin held the Blood Hell Sword and charged forward. His sword aura was sometimes as explosive as fire, and sometimes as gentle as water. It was sometimes as sharp as metal, and sometimes as heavy as the earth. This is the sword intent. Tuobashang resisted with all his might and released the power of the 4 totem spirits to the maximum. However, Yi Guqin also took out the 5 primogenitor totems. The suppressive aura immediately weakened Tuobashang's totem power by 40 to 50%. Gentle like water. Water benefits all things and does not compete. However, when it is angry, it can also sweep across the world like raging waves. Yi Guqin had a kind of understanding in his heart. He took out his sword aura again. It was no longer peaceful water. Instead, it was a terrifying and ferocious sword aura. He had completely comprehended the water sword intent. Yi Guqin's eyes shone brightly. The more he attacked, the deeper his understanding of the sword intent. Before long, Yi Guqin's sword aura was once again as heavy as the earth. It was like an absolute defense that could not be broken. The earth bears the weight of all things. Endure and remain motionless. Defense is paramount. A thick and profound sword intent spread out from Yi Guqin's sword aura. He had completely comprehended the earth sword intent. This. Everyone present was dumbstruck. They stared blankly at the profound sword intent that surged out. The shock in their hearts could not be any greater. 5 Crown King had actually started to comprehend the sword intent at the last minute. Moreover, he had comprehended it so quickly. So powerful. Even if it is an ordinary sword intent, he can comprehend it so quickly. He is definitely a sword Dao genius. Indeed. Even if the sword sex Yi Guqin was here, he would not be able to compare to 5 Crown King. Many prodigies sighed. Yan Wushuang also stared at 5 Crown King with her beautiful eyes. He actually comprehended 2 sword intents consecutively. Even a sword Dao genius like Yi Guqin would not be able to do so. Just who is this 5 Crown King? Yan Wushuang wondered secretly. Just as the people from the 7 major forces were shocked, Yi Guqin had already comprehended the metal sword intent again. He had comprehended it so quickly. First, it was naturally because of the illuminated sword heart and the sword demon's sword Dao talent. Second, it was because he had awakened the 5 ancestral totems. Yi Guqin had a very deep understanding of the 5 elements. Third, it was because of the 5 elements sacred fruit. The 5 elements sacred fruit's effects were not just boundless spirit qi. It also contained the mystic power of the 5 elements and the Tao of the 5 elements. Yi Guqin was able to comprehend the ordinary sword intent so quickly because of all these enhancements. Next, Yi Guqin's sword moves changed again. They were continuous and unrestrained, as if they were endless. This was the life force of the wood sword intent. The moment Yi Guqin fully comprehended the wood sword intent, his entire body erupted with an unparalleled 5-colored divine light. He had completely comprehended the 5 sword intents. His battle strength skyrocketed again. He slashed his sword toward Tuobashang, carrying the power of the 5 sword intents. This incomparably arrogant and overbearing 4-crown king finally revealed a trace of panic on his face. Chapter 521. It was no wonder that Tuobashang's expression changed. That was because Yi Guqin's aura was too powerful. The 5 ancestor totems covered the area. The 5 sword essences were invincible. He was like the brightest star. The moment he was born, he outshone all the other heaven's favorites. In the eyes of the people from the 7 superpowers, this 5-crown king's talent in the way of the sword even surpassed that of Yi Guqin of the sword sect. After all, Quintuple Crown King had comprehended 4 sword essences in front of everyone. In addition to the fire sword essence that he had already comprehended, he now had 5 sword essences. Although it was just 5 ordinary sword essences, it was still extremely shocking. Tuobashang, your threat is not worth mentioning in my eyes. Yi Guqin's tone was indifferent. Previously, Tuobashang had said that he would definitely kill him today. But what about the current situation? Tuobashang's eyes were filled with anger when he heard that. His chest heaved up and down as he was so angry that his organs were burning. However, he had to admit that he could do nothing to Yi Guqin. Kill. Yi Guqin did not say anything and released the 5 sword essences at the same time. Although Yi Guqin did not comprehend the 5 sword essences directly, and the 5 sword essences were not connected, their power was absolutely shocking, and it was enough to sweep the area. Metal sword essence, destroy heaven and earth. Wood sword essence, grow and multiply. Water sword essence, wild wolf raging waves. Fire sword essence, burn everything. Earth sword essence, absolute defense. Even though Yi Guqin did not use any sword moves, the 5 sword essences alone were not something that anyone could block. Tuobashang tried his best to activate the 4 totems, and the power of the 4 totems gathered together to form 4 wheels in front of him. Yi Guqin's eyes were cold as he activated the edge-splitting array on the bloody hell sword. The divine weapon, which was already extremely powerful to begin with, was now emitting a sharp sword qi that seemed to be able to cut through everything. Boom. There was a loud explosion. Tuobashang's body was pushed back again, and a bloody hole appeared on his shoulder. Yi Guqin's eyes flashed. He did not give Tuobashang a chance to attack again. Why are you still standing there? Tuobashang gritted his teeth and shouted angrily. Lei Jiuyo, Golden Sun Saint Sun, Feng Xiaotian, and the rest did not hesitate and struck at the same time. In this kind of situation, who would still want to have a fair duel? 5 Crown King swept through the place. If it was one-on-one, it was likely that no one would be able to contend against him. Let's go as well and help 5 Crown King. Yan Wushuang shouted. She had never thought that one day, she would actually help the barbarians. But now, under the suppression of the heavenly barbaric spiritual slaughtering array, only the 5 Crown King was their savior. Hearing this, Xianhao the young combat emperor, and the others hesitated. Prime Sovereign Saber Addict raised his brows slightly. However, without much hesitation, they also directly attacked. Although Gu Zun and the others were outstanding talents, not everyone could withstand an Earth-grade array formation. If something happened to 5 Crown King, their fates would definitely not be any better. As Gu Zun and the others made their moves, another battle broke out around the desolate ancient arena. The geniuses of the 2 factions clashed once again. As for Zhou Tong, Run Tingting and the others, they silently retreated to the back. Zhou Tong hated Five Crown King to the core and would naturally not attack. Ren Tingting and the others followed Zhou Tong's lead, so they would not attack either. Humph, they actually helped the barbarian race's Five Crown King. Are they crazy? Ren Tingting snorted coldly, appearing rather disdainful. However, she had never thought of that. If Five Crown King had not used an Earth-grade array to resist the heavenly barbarian slaughtering array, she would have died. She still had the time to gossip here? She would probably have lost her life. Fight, fight, it's best if you all die together. Zhou Tong's lips curled into a cold smile. To him, the best outcome was naturally for Five Crown King and Tuobashang to die together. However, reality was obviously not as good as Zhou Tong imagined. With the help of Yan Wushuang and the others, Yi Guchen was not surrounded by the barbarians. He did not stop attacking and charged towards Tuobashang. This was because Yi Guchen looked fine to outsiders, but his body was under a huge burden. After all, no matter how strong Yi Guchen's body was, he was only in the Divine Soul realm. Even with the help of the 5 elemental sacred fruit, he could not maintain an Earth-grade array at the Divine Soul realm for long. At this moment, Yi Guchen's body was already injured. The surface of his heavenly demon general armor was covered in cracks. This was Yi Guchen's ancient god form. If he was in his normal form, Yi Guchen's body would not be able to withstand it. If he was an ordinary prodigy, his body would have directly exploded. Let's end this quickly. Yi Guchen's mouth leaked blood. He could not hold on for long. Boom. Yi Guchen raised the blood hell sword and released 5 sword intents at the same time. 5 colored light shone in all directions. At the same time, the 5 primal totem spirits attacked Tuobashang together with the sword. Tuobashang roared, almost risking his life. He was also in a bad situation. The Mad Demon's secret skill had reached its limit. 4 symbols divine disc. The power of Tuobashang's 4 totem spirits gathered and turned into a 4-sided disc. It seemed to be able to crush everything as it collided with Yi Guchen. With a loud explosion, shocking air waves rippled in all directions. The ground trembled and endless cracks spread. Puff. Tuobashang's body flew backward and spat out a mouthful of blood. Yi Guchen also spat out a mouthful of blood. However, his expression turned cold. He dashed toward Tuobashang and pointed his sword at the disc array. Oh no! Tuobashang's expression changed drastically. With a crack, the disc array was hit by the Blood Hell Sword. The Blood Hell Sword was a supreme-grade Dermic inscription divine weapon. In addition to the splitting edge array, its sharpness was needless to say. As the sound rang out, the disc array directly shattered, turning into fragments that scattered in the air. Tuobashang's body kept retreating as if his soul had been sucked out. At the same time, the Heavenly Barbarian Slaughtering Array and the Heavenly Barbarian Beast Array slowly dissipated. Yi Guchen spat out another mouthful of blood. His body's strength had reached its limit. The 6 Paths Ashura Sword Array and the Azura Demon Spirit also dissipated. As the 2 Earth-grade arrays dissipated, the desolate ancient arena, which was originally filled with killing intent, regained its calm. On the barbarian tribe's side, most of their faces turned pale. Their plan to kill the prodigies of the 7 major factions had completely failed. Tuobashang was even more dazed. His face was filled with disbelief. We did it. Yan Wushuang and the other prodigies of the 7 major factions were pleasantly surprised. This calamity had been resolved by Five Crown King. Yan Wushuang's eyes shone brightly as she stared at the blood-red figure standing on the arena. To be honest, other than Yan Chang'e and Feng Manlu, the only person Yan Wushuang admired was Yi Guchen. However, Yi Guchen had yet to appear. The one who had saved them was the barbarian tribe's Five Crown King. This made Yan Wushuang feel complicated. However, Yan Wushuang knew that there was one more person of the opposite sex that she admired. Yan Wushuang wasn't the only one. The other prodigies also looked at the figure with complicated gazes. The Sword Sect, whom they had placed their hopes on, had yet to appear. Now the barbarian tribe's Five Crown King had indeed saved them. This was a very complicated feeling for these prodigies. Tuobashang was completely exhausted and had no strength to continue fighting. Just as the prodigies of the 7 major factions were hoping that the 5-crown king could kill Tuobashang, Yi Guchen groaned and his body trembled. He almost fell to the ground. He used the blood hell sword to support his body, and barely managed to stay upright. As expected, it's too difficult. Yi Guchen sighed inwardly. Not good. Looks like the 5-crown king is also heavily injured. The prodigies of the 7 major factions paled. At this moment, a cold light flashed in Zhou Tong's eyes. He shouted, "Everyone, the 5-crown king is a prodigy of the barbarian tribe. He will definitely be a threat to the 7 major factions in the future. If we don't kill him now, when will we?" As his words faded, the beautiful eyes of Ren Tingting and the others flickered as they stood beside Zhou Tong. The 5-crown king who had just saved them was now being killed by them. How ironic. Chapter 522. Zhou Tong did not hide the murderous intent in his eyes. Although he did not know 5-crown king's true identity, it did not hinder his murderous intent. Previously in the valley, it was this 5-crown king who had ruined his plan. Now he had only acted after Zhou Tong and the others had paid the price. Therefore, Zhou Tong saw 5-crown king as a thorn in his side. Previously, Zhou Tong had not dared to act rashly due to 5-crown king's strength. But now, seeing 5-crown king's body trembling, he was clearly injured. How could Zhou Tong miss this opportunity? "Zhou Tong, do you have any shame?" Yan Wushuang's face was ashen. She had seen shameless people before, but she had never seen such a shameless person. One should know that 5-crown king had protected all the geniuses of the 7 factions. Zhou Tong and the others had knelt because they were afraid of death. Otherwise, they would have been protected as well. However, the person who had protected the 7 factions was now being attacked by the 7 factions. Was there anything more ironic than this? Humph, we did not receive 5-crown king's protection. Ren Tingting snorted. You mean to say that you feel honored to kneel? Yi Xia curled his lips and said disdainfully. You. Ren Tingting's face turned red, unable to refute. Princess Yuan Shi and the others also looked embarrassed. They were too ashamed to show their faces. Humph, why waste your breath? I, Zhou Tong, will eliminate this threat on behalf of the 7 factions today, Zhou Tong said coldly as he charged at Yi Guchen. At the same time, Ren Tingting and the others followed closely behind. How dare you? Yan Wushuang and the others shouted coldly and stepped forward to stop them. Ha, interesting. Let's go too. The eyes of Lei Jiuyo and the others flickered as they looked at Zhou Tong with a trace of disdain. However, this was exactly what they needed. Since the 7 factions were having internal strife, they could take the opportunity to kill 5-crown king. Lei Jiuyo did not hesitate as he had already formed a blood feud with 5-crown king. However, the Golden Sun Saint, Feng Xiaotian and the others hesitated. After all, they did not have any deep grudges with 5-crown king. Moreover, the consequences of attacking 5-crown king rashly were unpredictable. As for Tabashang, he was heavily injured at this moment, and he was unable to continue fighting since a long time ago. He was utterly unable to make a move against Yi Guchen. When Yi Guchen saw this, his gaze turned cold. He was indeed not in a good state at the moment. The spiritual energy in his body was in disorder, and his physical body was injured. It was not suitable for him to continue fighting. Green Spirit Palm. Zhou Tong gathered the vital energy in his body and channeled it into his palm. A green palm print formed in front of him and pressed down on Yi Guchen. As a prodigy of the Divine Soul 9 transformations, Zhou Tong's strength was beyond doubt. A cold light flashed in Yi Guchen's eyes. Even though he was injured, he wasn't in existence that Zhou Tong could provoke. The power of the 5 elements totem poured into the bloody hell sword. The sharp sword swept out and collided with Zhou Tong's palm. Poochie. Blood splattered everywhere. Zhou Tong's expression abruptly changed as he hurriedly retreated. A trace of blood had appeared on his palm. Fortunately, he had stopped in time. Otherwise, his entire palm would have been sliced off. On the other side, Yi Guchen's figure also retreated several steps. Although he didn't seem to have any reaction on the surface, there was more blood at the corner of Yi Guchen's mouth. Zhou Tong's expression was extremely grave. He realized that he couldn't even defeat the heavily injured Five-Crown King. This was undoubtedly a joke. I don't believe it. Five-Crown King must be injured right now. As long as I slowly wear him down, he will eventually run out of energy. Zhou Tong's eyes flashed as he prepared to attack again. As for Yan Wushuang and the others, they were tightly held back by Ren Tingting and the others. Just as Zhou Tong was about to attack again, a loud and clear cry rang out nearby. Immediately, an incomparably blazing flame shot directly at Zhou Tong. Who? Zhou Tong's expression changed as he was caught off guard. Vital energy surged out of his body in an attempt to isolate this flame. However, Zhou Tong shockingly discovered that this blazing flame actually seemed to be able to burn even true qi. Ah! Zhou Tong screamed as he retreated in a sorry state. His clothes were burned in many places and his skin was charred black. Seeing this, Yi Guchen's eyes flashed slightly as he released the vermilion bird wings on his back. He directly soared into the air and flew into the distance. Damn it! Zhou Tong barely managed to extinguish the flames as he watched Yi Guchen fly into the distance with an extremely dark expression. On the other side, Tuobashang was also staring at Yi Guchen's departing figure. His teeth were clenched so tightly that they were about to make cracking sounds. Today's matter was an unerasable humiliation to Tuobashang. With Yi Guchen's departure, the entire desolate ancient arena fell silent. On the barbarian tribe's side, their leader, Tuobashang, was heavily injured and their formation plate was destroyed. They had lost all their advantages. The 7 factions didn't have it easy either. Although Yi Guchen had sent out the 6 Paths Azura Sword formation in time, there were still many casualties in a short period of time. Fortunately, some of the top heaven prides didn't die. Otherwise, the losses would be even greater. Barbarian tribe, we will remember this. Yan Wushuang and the other top heaven prides stared coldly at the barbarian tribe. If you still want to fight, we will keep you company. Lei Jiuyo, the Golden Sun Saint, Feng Xiaotian and the others said strongly. However, both sides had suffered heavy losses and knew that it wasn't good to continue fighting. Although both camps were unwilling, they could only stop fighting for the time being and retreat. As for what kind of battle would erupt in the future, it wasn't something that the heaven prides could control. It was something that the divine dwelling experts had to consider. After that, the heaven prides of both sides retreated. Zhou Tong's face was solemn as he thought to himself, when I break through to the life and death threshold with the help of the life and death intent, both Yi Guchen and Five-Crown King will be trampled under my feet. Not only Zhou Tong, but many other heaven prides had also obtained the life and death intent. It could be said that although the desolate ancient arena battle was tragic, the surviving heaven prides had also gained a lot. One could imagine that it wouldn't be long before these heaven prides who had obtained the life and death intent broke through and became experts at the life and death threshold. There would be a large gap between them and ordinary heaven prides. Many heaven prides rejoiced. Only Yan Wushuang and the others in the Sword Sex Tower Association weren't in a good mood. This was because Yi Guchen, the benchmark of the Sword Sex Tower Association, hadn't appeared from beginning to end. 100 miles away from the desolate ancient arena, Yi Guchen, who was flying in the air, landed with a loud thud. The heavenly demon general armor on his body disappeared, revealing his original appearance. Yi Guchen's body was covered in open wounds from which blood flowed out. The spirit qi in his body was also extremely chaotic. The effects of the sacred elixir were extremely powerful. Even after receiving a portion of the 6 Paths Azura Sword formation, a large portion of the sacred elixir's power was still stored in Yi Guchen's body. Brother Condor, thank you for your help. Yi Guchen looked at the little red bird beside him and said, "Don't mention it. Grandpa Condor also doesn't like that bastard. You should heal your wounds first." The one who spat out the flames was naturally the divine Condor. Yi Guchen nodded slightly and sat on the ground to heal himself. Although consuming the 5 elemental sacred fruit was a huge risk, the harvest was not small. The blood-dissolving demonic poison had been removed, and the 5 sword intents had been completely comprehended. All in all, it was worth it. Yi Guchen took out a healing elixir and consumed it to heal the chaotic qi and blood in his body. After 3 days, Yi Guchen finally recovered some of his primordial qi. After cultivating the ancient god tactics, Yi Guqin's physical body's recovery ability had greatly increased. His injuries could slowly heal over time. At the same time, a large portion of the five elements' sacred fruit's power was still in his body. When Yi Guqin broke through, the sacred elixir's power would be of great help. It's about time. Next, I'll head to the barbarian tribe's five elements temple. I wonder if there are any opportunities there that can help me break through to one-star ancient god? Of course, the most important thing is to obtain the sacred elixir. Su Jianshi, wait for me. And Zhou Tong and the Shinto family. When I return from the barbarian tribe, it will be the time of your deaths. Yi Guqin's thoughts ran wild as he looked into the distance. Chapter 523. The battle in the ancient desolate Forbidden Zone had ended. However, it was the beginning of an even bigger storm. Although some of the prodigies from the seven factions had come out of the ancient desolate arena unscathed. However, if the mysterious Five-Crown King had not interfered, the prodigies from the seven factions would have ended up like that. It was also because of this that the experts of the seven major forces were incomparably furious. As for the bet on the ancient desolate arena, it was already meaningless. Both sides had already gone all out. However, most of the prodigies from the seven factions were grateful to the mysterious Five-Crown King. Without Five-Crown King, they would not have been able to survive. However, there was another piece of news that cast a dark cloud over the Sword Sect Pagoda Forest. Yi Guqin never showed up from the beginning to the end. Not only that, even after the battle in the ancient desolate Forbidden Zone had ended, Yi Guqin had not returned to the Sword Sect Pagoda Forest. Not only were the members of the Sword Sect Pagoda Forest discussing this matter, but the other factions were also discussing it. Why do you think the Sword Sect Master did not appear in the ancient desolate arena? Could it be that he's afraid of Four-Crown King? However, I think that the Sword Sect Master might have silently fallen in the ancient desolate Forbidden Zone. All sorts of guesses and rumors were spreading throughout northern Liang City. However, no matter what, there were only two guesses. The first was that Yi Guqin was a coward and did not go to the ancient desolate arena. The second was that Yi Guqin had already fallen in the ancient desolate Forbidden Zone. Either way, it was not a good thing for Yi Guqin. Instead, the mysterious Five-Crown King was even more eye-catching because of the Sword Sect's negative example. Do you think that Five-Crown King is one of the prodigies from the seven factions? How is that possible? However, I really hope so. After all, he saved all the prodigies from the seven factions by himself. Isn't that kind of hero more admirable than the Sword Sect Master? That's right. In the past, I thought that the Sword Master was full of pride and respected him. But now, it seems that the Five-Crown King is the one who is truly worthy of respect. Even if he was a demonic beast in human form, I would still respect him, let alone a barbarian. Many people were curious about Five-Crown King and respected him. Under such rumors, Yan Wushuang, Zither Fairy, and the others felt melancholy all day long as they kept sighing. As for Zhou Tong and the others, they were already preparing to break through the life and death threshold. And the person who was the most perturbed was none other than the Shinto family head, Shinto Zhan. He was happy that Yi Guqin had not returned. However, at the same time, the four elders of the Shinto family did not return. What's going on? I'm not surprised that Yi Guqin has fallen, but why is there no news of the four elders? Shinto Zhan was a little nervous. The Shinto family did not have the same means as the blood barbarians to determine if a person had died from the shattering of the jade token. Therefore, Shinto Zhan was unsure of the situation of the four elders. Could it be that he left because he was afraid of leaving behind any clues? Shinto Zhan could not help but think. Indeed, this was the only reason. After all, if this matter were to be exposed, the Shinto family would definitely fall into the abyss. But in any case, Yi Guqin was already a dead man in Shinto Zhan's eyes. Haha, fortunately, this hidden danger was nipped in the bud. The tallest tree in the forest will be destroyed by the wind. With a faint smile on his face, Shinto Zhan breathed a sigh of relief. After the matter in the forbidden domain of the ancient desolate era ended, The 7 great forces and the barbarian race once again broke out in war. This time, the war was even more intense than before. Even divine dwelling stage experts were involved. The barbarian king, who had walked out of the 5 Elements temple, finally made his move. His strength was incomparably powerful, and even some divine dwelling stage experts from the 7 great forces were seriously injured by him. That was until Feng Manlu made his move. A divine wind sword roared in the sky. It blocked the barbarian king's ferocious power. At this point, there was no longer any doubt about Feng Manlu's strength. Even if he was only at the World Spirit Bridge stage, his true combat strength was stronger than ordinary divine dwelling stage experts. However, after a peak battle, the 2 forces temporarily ceased their activities. It was likely that they had suffered some serious injuries. And after the temporary silence, the 2 forces were very interested in the 5-Crown King and wanted to know his identity. But after the ancient Desolate Era battle arena, the mysterious 5-Crown King seemed to have disappeared, and there was no more news about him. The 5 Elements land was an extremely vast land. The 5 Elements barbarian race, including the Wind Clan, Thunder Clan, Soul Barbarian race, Bone Barbarian race and others, all lived on this land. The most mysterious place in the 5 Elements land was naturally the 5 Elements temple that existed in its depths. The 5 Elements temple could be said to be the core of the barbarian race. It was a sacred place that was revered by all barbarians. The Elders' Assembly in the 5 Elements temple was the existence that dominated the will of the barbarian race. It could be said that the Elders' Assembly could make the barbarian race fight in all directions, and could also make them forge swords into plows. However, the 5 Elements temple had always been known for its mysteriousness. Let alone outsiders, even among the barbarian race, not many people were qualified to visit the 5 Elements temple. At this moment, a figure appeared on a plain at the edge of the 5 Elements land. He was wearing a black robe and had a handsome face. His eyes were as deep and bright as the cold stars in the sky. It was Yi Guchen. Finally, I have arrived at the 5 Elements land. Yi Guchen sighed slightly. After leaving the ancient desolate forbidden zone, Yi Guchen finally arrived at the 5 Elements land after a few days of trekking. Boy Yi Guchen, are you going to enter the 5 Elements land just like this? The divine eagle, who was standing on Yi Guchen's shoulder, asked. Of course not. Yi Guchen smiled faintly and took out the disguise item that Su Moyan had given him from his origin ring. After a while, the original appearance of Yi Guchen had disappeared. Instead, it was replaced by a young man with a tall stature, bronze-colored skin, and an ordinary face. At first glance, Yi Guchen looked like an ordinary young man from the barbarian race. The divine eagle clicked its tongue in amazement. The encampment of the water tribe should be in the 5 Elements land at a place called Yunming Lake. I should meet up with the dragon girl first. Yi Guchen thought to himself. As an outsider, he was quite unfamiliar with the barbarian race and the 5 Elements land. The only person he could rely on was the dragon girl. Yi Guchen planned to contact the dragon girl directly after arriving at Yunming Lake, to see if there was a chance to enter the 5 Elements temple. Yi Guchen thought and directly walked forward. In less than a day, Yi Guchen finally entered the 5 Elements land completely. However, the terrain of the 5 Elements land was extremely complicated. Not to mention outsiders, even the barbarian race would easily get lost without a guide. Yi Guchen stood on top of a towering rock pillar and scanned the surroundings. The divine eagle on his shoulder looked at Yi Guchen strangely and said, Boy Yi Guchen, do you have a bad sense of direction? Yi Guchen was speechless. The 5-Crown King, who had dominated the sword sect for a generation, was actually a bad sense of direction. For such matters, it was better to keep a low profile. At this moment, a group of barbarian race carriages suddenly appeared in Yi Guchen's line of sight. Yi Guchen's eyes narrowed slightly. The barbarian race army invaded the Great Wilderness Mansion, and naturally had logistics. This group of carriages must be returning to the barbarian race after transporting the resources. Moreover, Yi Guchen sensed through the tongue snake totem that almost all the totem warriors in the group of carriages had water attribute totems. In other words, this group of carriages was returning to the water tribe. Without any hesitation, Yi Guchen's figure flashed and caught up with the group of carriages. Not long after, Yi Guchen appeared in front of the group of carriages. A young man sat on the leading wildebeest. The man was about 20 years old and wore leather armor. There was a faint arrogance and indifference in his eyes. "Brother, I wonder if you can bring me along?" Yi Guchen slightly cupped his hands and said in a calm tone, "Which tribe are you from?" The arrogant young man asked calmly. Yi Guchen did not reply because he did not know any of the barbarian race tribes. Seeing this, the arrogant young man's expression became even more disdainful. "So you are a wandering barbarian?" There was a trace of disdain in his tone. The so-called wandering barbarians were barbarians who did not have a fixed residence or were abandoned by their tribes. This kind of person was either a criminal or a person with inferior talent and was not liked. Of course, there were also some vicious thugs who would be expelled and become wandering barbarians. However, Yi Guchen looked ordinary and his aura was restrained. In the eyes of the young man, he naturally belonged to the first category. "Brother Emotao, what happened?" In one of the carriages at the back, a pretty girl from the Water clan lifted the curtain, stuck out her tender and pretty face and asked. Chapter 524. The young girl was dressed in a watercolored dress, and her figure was exquisite. Her skin was not wheat-colored like ordinary barbarian women, but the tender white unique to girls of the Water tribe. And looking at her appearance, she was not old, about 14 or 15 years old. "Shui Rua, it's nothing, just a wandering barbarian who wants to hitch a ride on the convoy." The arrogant young man named Emotao looked at Shui Rua. His tone was obviously gentle, and there was a trace of admiration in his eyes. Shui Rua blinked her beautiful eyes, glanced at Yi Guchen and said with a trace of sympathy, "Brother Emotao, look at him, he's quite pitiful. Let's bring him along, it's not a problem." Yi Guchen had been running around for days, and his clothes were travel-worn, and his face was a little dusty. Coupled with the somewhat ordinary appearance after the disguise, he looked a little down and out. All right, for Shui Rua's sake, you'll follow us." Emotao snorted, as if he was doing charity. Yi Guchen did not care and nodded slightly. Looking at Yi Guchen's indifferent appearance, Emotao could not help but be a little unhappy. "I'm so kind to take you in. Shouldn't you bow and say thank you? What's the meaning of nodding?" Emotao could not help being a little unhappy in his heart. But with Shui Rua around, he could not flare up. He just said with a little sarcastic tone, "Kid, behave yourself in our convoy. Don't have any crooked ideas. Also, you can only walk. Do you understand?" There was obviously an empty seat in the carriage. But Emotao obviously would not let Yi Guchen sit in the carriage. Yi Guchen did not care much. In his eyes, Emotao was not much bigger than an ant. Moreover, he wanted to go to Cloud Dream Marsh wholeheartedly, and did not want to cause trouble, so he did not say anything. Seeing Yi Guchen did not have any reaction, a trace of contempt flashed across Emotao's eyes. Obviously, Yi Guchen was equal to a coward in his eyes. Subsequently, Yi Guchen followed this group of carriages and headed in the direction of Cloud Dream Marsh. Along the way, it was a little boring. The people in the carriages also began to chat. "Tisk tsk. Have you heard of the war in the Forbidden Zone of the Ancient Desolate?" "I've heard about it. The most surprising thing is the appearance of Five Crown King. He has 5 ancestral totems. Even Tuobashang is far inferior to him in our barbarian race. Many totem warriors in the caravan side. The barbarian race worshipped the brave, and the Five Crown King was undoubtedly the spiritual symbol of the barbarian race. In fact, his status in the world of berserkers was equivalent to the entire 5-element temple. From this, one could imagine just how great of an impact the descendant of Five Crown King brought to the barbarian race. Is that Five Crown King really that powerful?" Shui Ruomiao's eyes were filled with curiosity. Clearly, she was extremely interested. Seeing the look of anticipation on Shui Rua's face, Emotao couldn't help but turn his head and say, "Of course he's powerful. I was fortunate enough to hear from a holy son who participated in the desolate ancient arena battle. That Five Crown King's strength is unrivaled, and he swept through all 4 directions. When the 5 primogenitor totems appear, even Tuobashang would have to avoid him. At this point, Emotao sighed and shook his head. That kind of existence was practically the peak of the younger generation of the barbarian race, and he could only look up to him. Big brother Emotao has actually heard about the 5 Crown King. Can you tell Shui Rua about it? Shui Rua's eyes lit up with anticipation. Of course. Emotao raised his head slightly, as if he knew how glorious the 5 Crown King's deeds were. Hearing others talk about the 5 Crown King, Yi Guchen couldn't help but have a strange feeling, and he smiled faintly. What are you smiling about? Is the 5 Crown King's matter very funny? Emotao glanced at Yi Guchen's smile, and shouted unhappily. Nothing. Yi Guchen said lightly. His identity as the 5 Crown King could not be exposed for the time being. After all, he stood on the opposite side of the barbarian race in the desolate ancient arena. If the news spread out, there would probably be a large group of barbarian race experts coming to capture him and find out his identity before he even reached the 5-element temple. Humph. Emotao ignored him and told Shui Rua about the desolate ancient arena battle. Shui Rua's heart was filled with longing. As Emotao spoke, there was a tinge of jealousy in his heart. After all, no one was willing to see the girl they liked admire another person. However, Emotao didn't mind too much. After all, whether it was him or Shui Rua, they were too far away from the 5 Crown King. They weren't even from the same world. Sob, I really want to see the 5 Crown King. Shui Rua's eyes sparkled as she listened. Hehe, Shui Rua, that kind of person is not someone we can touch. Even the honorable saints and saintesses are just ants in front of the 5 Crown King. Emotao shook his head and sighed. Shui Rua's eyes revealed a trace of disappointment, but she also understood. She was just an ordinary water tribe girl, and her totems were only elite totems. At most, she was a totem warrior, and didn't even have the chance to become a saintess. And the 5 Crown King was someone who could easily crush saints and saintesses. As for Emotao, he was also an ordinary totem warrior. Otherwise, he wouldn't only be in charge of logistics. After chatting for a while, the atmosphere became silent. Shui Rua glanced at Yi Guchen, who was walking, and the sympathy in her eyes deepened. Come up and sit with me in the carriage. Shui Rua shouted. All the barbarians were either riding horses or sitting in carriages. Only Yi Guchen was walking. No need. Yi Guchen smiled faintly. It's okay. Shui Rua said. She suddenly saw the divine eagle perched on Yi Guchen's shoulder, and urged Yi Guchen to sit with her in the carriage. Yi Guchen thought about it, and didn't mind. He directly sat in the carriage under Emotao's murderous gaze. This kid, he's going too far. Emotao's eyes turned cold. However, this was Shui Rua's invitation, and Emotao couldn't say anything. However, his impression of Yi Guchen was extremely poor. After Yi Guchen sat in the carriage, Shui Rua's gaze remained on the divine eagle perched on his shoulder. What a cute little red bird. Shui Rua said with interest. What little red bird? Grandpa Condor is a condor, a big condor. Do you understand? The divine eagle couldn't help but roll its eyes. It can talk. Shui Rua exclaimed in surprise, and looked at Yi Guchen expectantly. She seemed to be asking, can I touch it? Yi Guchen smiled faintly and nodded. He had a good impression of this kind girl from the water tribe. Shui Rua directly hugged the divine eagle, and kept rubbing its feathers. Grandpa Condor's feathers. The divine eagle screamed. Shui Rua giggled. Yi Guchen smiled faintly. After a life-and-death battle, it wasn't bad to relax like this. He also sensed that the totem in Shui Rua's body was only an ordinary elite totem. I heard from the dragon girl that the ancestral totem not only has the power to suppress, but also has the power to help metamorphose. I wonder if my tongue snake totem can help Shui Rua metamorphose? Yi Guchen couldn't help but think. It was easy for him to activate the ancestral totem's metamorphosis power. But for Shui Rua, it might be a change of fate. The difference in status between a totem warrior and a saint and a saintess was like heaven and earth. Shui Rua's kindness made Yi Guchen willing to help her. If not, he could greet the dragon girl. With the dragon girl's status in the water tribe, it would be easy for her to take care of Shui Rua. As for Emotao, Yi Guchen only hoped that he would know what was good for him and not provoke him. He wondered if Mo Tao would regret his attitude and actions when he found out the truth. Chapter 525. After 2 days of trekking, the team had thoroughly entered the land of 5 elements. They were heading towards the Cloud Dream Lake. During these 2 days, Mo Tao, who was leading the team, had a gloomy face. Especially when he heard Shui Ruo's bell-like laughter from the carriage behind them. His eyes were filled with gloominess. He is just a wandering barbarian. Mo Tao snorted in his heart. Although he was unhappy, he did not feel threatened. No matter what, Shui Ruo would not fall for a mediocre wandering barbarian. Boy, you are too ignorant. When we return to the Water Tribe, I will secretly teach you how to behave. Mo Tao's face flashed with a trace of coldness. With his status, it was easy for him to teach a wandering barbarian a lesson. At night, the sky was filled with stars and clouds. This group of carriages also stopped and set up campfire tents. Mo Tao and the others led a few totem warriors to hunt prey and barbecue them over the fire. The sizzling sound of oil made Shui Ruo's mouth water. She stared at the barbecue with her beautiful eyes. Shui Ruo for you. Mo Tao tore off a fat leg that was dripping with oil and handed it to Shui Ruo. Shui Ruo reached out and took it. After a slight hesitation, she looked at Yi Guchen, who was sitting alone not far away. She walked to Yi Guchen and said, "Here, this is for you." Yi Guchen was stunned. Mo Tao saw this and walked over with a gloomy face. He said coldly, "Shui Ruo, don't worry about him. He didn't do anything during the hunt. Why should you give it to him?" "Thank you, but I don't need it." Yi Guchen saw this and took out his dry food from the vital ring. But the divine eagle on his shoulder was not polite. It flapped its wings and pecked at the barbecued fat leg. Shui Ruo laughed. Girls always had no resistance to fluffy and cute things. Mo Tao snorted and glared at Yi Guchen with a hint of threat in his eyes. He seemed to be warning him not to overestimate himself. Yi Guchen turned a blind eye and continued to eat his food. Not long after, they were full. Yi Guchen sat cross-legged with his eyes closed. In his mind, the brilliant sword heart was operating. Although he had comprehended 5 sword intents, he had not fused them together to comprehend the 5 elements sword intents. Although the 5 sword intents were powerful when used separately, they were still powerful. However, if he could form the 5 elements sword intent, Yi Guchen's strength would skyrocket once again. However, the 5 elements sword intent was a peerless sword intent. It was far more difficult to comprehend than ordinary sword intents. Even with Yi Guchen's talent, it was not something he could comprehend in a short period of time. However, just as Yi Guchen was comprehending the 5 elements sword intent, he suddenly sensed some movement in the distance. Yi Guchen's current cultivation had reached the 8th transformation of the Divine Soul, and the range of his Divine Soul's perception had also increased to 4,000 feet. This had already far exceeded the perception range of an ordinary 9th transformation Divine Soul transformation expert. It was also because of this that Yi Guchen was able to sense some dangers in advance. Demonic beasts. No, there's also. Yi Guchen opened his eyes slightly, and his gaze was deep. At this moment, Mo Tao and the rest did not sense anything. After eating and drinking to their heart's content, they gathered together to chat. Yi Guchen hesitated for a moment, but still decided to inform them of the news. However, he did not directly tell Mo Tao and the rest because he knew that Mo Tao would ignore him. Yi Guchen walked in front of Shui Ruo and said, "Shui Ruo, we seem to be surrounded." "What?" Shui Ruo was puzzled. "There's the aura of demonic beasts, and..." Yi Guchen wanted to say, but Shui Ruo's expression changed slightly as if she understood. She nodded and walked directly to Mo Tao's side. "Big brother Mo Tao, there seems to be demonic beasts." "What? Demonic beasts? Where?" Mo Tao and the rest instantly got up and looked around vigilantly. However, they did not even sense the slightest movement of the wind or grass. "Shui Ruo, you're too nervous." Mo Tao laughed and shook his head. He said. Shui Ruo stammered, feeling a little wronged. Mo Tao frowned. He really could not help but scold. "Kid, that's enough. Don't you know who you are?" Do you want to attract Shui Ruo's attention in this way? It's too childish. Mo Tao shook his head. He was really a little impatient with Yi Guqin. In his view, Yi Guqin just wanted to use this method to show his ability to Shui Ruo. Shui Ruo looked at Yi Guqin doubtfully. Was that really the case? Yi Guqin's eyes sank slightly. Mo Tao and the rest's divine soul perception range was at most a few hundred feet. It was naturally impossible for them to sense the danger in advance like Yi Guqin. Yi Guqin spoke out of kindness, for the sake of the fact that they had brought him along the way. Seeing that Mo Tao did not appreciate it, Yi Guqin also ignored him and sat alone to the side. Shameless. Mo Tao snorted. Shui Ruo looked at Yi Guqin with a trace of hesitation. In the short 2 days of getting along with him, she felt that the ordinary young man in front of her should not be that kind of person. But there was indeed no trace of demon beasts around. Maybe he's too scared. Shui Ruo shook her head. However, in just a moment, a scream suddenly came from 10 feet away from the team. Oh no, it's the cry of Turing! A totem warrior exclaimed. Some of them took turns to guard the periphery. The voice came from the totem warrior who was on duty. The scream was extremely shrill. In the surrounding dark dense forest, pairs of blood-red beast eyes flashed with ferocious cold light. It's a pack of wolves. Some totem warriors' faces froze. Although the demon wolves in the land of 5 elements were not strong individually, hundreds of them rushed up. Even an ordinary team of totem warriors would be torn to pieces. Not to mention their logistics team. In total, there were no more than 10 totem warriors. Mo Tao's face was livid. He glanced around. At a glance, there were at least hundreds of demon wolves. It was very difficult for them to fight against them. What made Mo Tao even more unwilling was that what Yi Guqin said was actually right. Shui Ruo was also frightened. The demon wolves in the land of 5 elements were fierce and well known. She looked at Yi Guqin. She did not expect that this ordinary young man from the barbarian tribe was right. But at the moment, no one cared whether Yi Guqin was right or wrong, because they were facing a life and death crisis at the moment. Different from Mo Tao and the others' ugly faces, Yi Guqin's face was always indifferent and calm. Woo! The demon wolves raised their heads and howled. Then, they rushed directly to the camp. Everyone form a circle and maintain the defensive line. Mo Tao shouted. Shui Ruo was protected in the middle of the crowd. Although she was also a totem warrior, she was still a woman. Only Yi Guqin, no one cared about him. They just followed him outside the defensive circle. Kill! Mo Tao roared. A group of totem warriors fought with the demon wolves. Blood splashed everywhere. The scene was chaotic. Yi Guqin sat calmly outside the defensive circle. He turned a blind eye to the demon wolves. Some of the demonic wolves also charged towards Yi Guqin with ferocious eyes. At this moment, the eyes of the divine eagle on Yi Guqin's shoulder were shining. Vaguely, a faint aura of a 5th-ranked demon beast spread out. Those demon wolves that rushed toward Yi Guqin had instinctive fear in their eyes. They immediately retreated and turned their heads to rush toward Mo Tao and the others. Yi Guqin did not care about these demon wolves. He frowned slightly and looked into the depths of the forest. Who are they? Chapter 526. In Yi Guqin's divine soul perception, there was not only the aura of the demon wolf pack. There was also the aura of the barbarians. Obviously, the demon wolf pack was driven by someone. But this was not a threat to Yi Guqin. In the dense forest, the sounds of killing and wolf howling were intertwined, accompanied by the splashing of blood. At this moment of life and death, they did not have the leisure to pay attention to why Yi Guqin's side was not attacked by the demon wolf pack. Mo Tao also exerted all of his strength, summoning his elite totem. Even Shui Ruo summoned her courage, summoning her totem and starting to fight. After a bloody massacre, the ground was littered with the corpses of the demon wolf pack. There were also some corpses of the totem warriors. Mo Tao's side lost 7 or 8 totem warriors. There were no more than 6 or 7 people left in the group. But seeing that the crisis was over, Mo Tao breathed a sigh of relief. He gasped for breath, his head full of sweat. Shui Ruo's face was a little pale. The rest of the totem warriors also felt lucky to have survived a disaster. Suddenly, Mo Tao glanced at Yi Guqin, who sat silently at the side and didn't show any signs of fighting, and flames of rage suddenly arose in his eyes as he said, "Kid, why aren't you making a move? We brought you along with us out of the kindness of our hearts. Yet you're just going to watch helplessly when we encountered danger?" This roar made Shui Ruo and the others turn their eyes to Yi Guqin. Yi Guqin said indifferently, "Didn't I remind you just now? Since you don't care about it, why should I care?" Yi Guqin's words made Mo Tao feel like a rooster that was choked by the neck. His face flushed red, but he could not say a word to refute. Not only him, but the rest of the totem warriors also showed a trace of shame. Just now, Yi Guqin kindly reminded them, but they did not care, and Mo Tao even ridiculed him. Now, how could they be qualified to blame Yi Guqin? "You humph." Mo Tao's face was extremely ugly, as if he had been slapped in the face. "Instead of arguing with me here, it's better to think about how to survive." Yi Guqin said lightly, "What do you mean?" Mo Tao's heart skipped a beat. "Haha, I didn't expect to be able to intercept a convoy." Suddenly, a deep and bright laughter was heard from the forest. A 7-feet-tall barbarian man walked out of the forest. His muscles were strong, and his chest was branded with a complicated demonic wolf totem. His face was ferocious, and his body was surrounded by a murderous aura. It was obvious that he had killed many people. He wasn't the only one who had appeared. More than 30 people's silhouettes had appeared in the surrounding forest. They were all totem warriors, and their bodies were emitting a fierce aura. "It's a wandering vicious barbarian," a totem warrior on Mo Tao's side shouted in a hoarse voice. His complexion had turned pale. There were 2 types of wandering barbarians. The first type was those with inferior talents or disabilities, and were abandoned by their tribes. There was also a group of thugs who had committed heinous crimes and committed crimes. Most of these wandering barbarians were quite strong. Coupled with their ferocious temperament, they were known as vicious barbarians. Vicious barbarians often appeared in the land of 5 elements, and intercepted people halfway. They were similar to bandits and robbers. However, these vicious barbarians were extremely cunning. They hid their heads and tails, and couldn't be eliminated. Therefore they had become a scourge. "Are you the Holy Sun Lang Mo of the barbarian tribe?" Mo Tao looked at the 7-feet-tall man. It seemed as if he had suddenly remembered something. His face turned pale, and his lips trembled as he spoke. "Haha, I didn't expect that I would be so famous." Holy Sun Lang Mo laughed. "What, he is the Holy Sun Lang Mo of the vicious barbarian tribe?" Shui Ruo's beautiful face turned pale as she heard this. Her delicate body trembled like a quail. Holy Sun Lang Mo was originally a holy son of the barbarian tribe. After committing a heinous crime, he betrayed the tribe, and became a vicious barbarian. He had a great reputation among the vicious barbarians, because he had the strength of a holy son. However, he was most famous for his cruelty and bloodthirstiness. He was even more cruel to women. Almost all women who fell into his hands would be tortured to death. This was also the reason why Shui Ruo was so frightened. She was only a 14 or 15-year-old girl. Holy Sun Lang Mo looked at Shui Ruo with a murderous glint in his eyes. Shui Ruo's delicate body trembled as she shrank behind Mo Tao. It was as if only Mo Tao could give her a sense of security. However, Mo Tao was also trembling at the moment. That was a Holy Sun-level figure. It was definitely not an existence they could contend with. "Holy Sun Lang Mo, we are from the Water Tribe. Can you make things easy for us?" Mo Tao braced himself and cupped his hands. If it was an ordinary vicious barbarian, he would have the courage to fight. However, in front of Holy Sun Lang Mo, how could they be a match? As for Yi Guqin, he had long been excluded. "Haha, so what if you are from the Water Tribe? Can you catch me?" Holy Sun Lang Mo sneered. If it was so easy to be encircled and annihilated, the vicious barbarians would have been wiped out long ago. Mo Tao's last glimmer of hope was also lost. His face was ashen. Seeing this, Holy Sun Lang Mo's eyes contained a trace of ridicule. "If you want to leave a way out, it's not impossible." As he finished speaking, he took a step forward and opened his legs. "Crawl under my crotch, and I'll spare your little life. This. Emo Tao's face turned red. For the barbarians, this was an absolute shame. But looking at Holy Sun Lang Emo, and then looking at the 30 vicious barbarians around. If he crawled under, there may be a glimmer of life. If he didn't, he would die directly. Emo Tao gritted his teeth and slowly bent his knees. Brother Emo Tao. Shui Ruo's eyes widened, her face full of disbelief. In her heart, the indomitable Emo Tao, who had always been incomparably arrogant, was actually willing to crawl under someone else's crotch. Hearing Shui Ruo shout, Emo Tao's eyes were filled with extreme humiliation. But he still gritted his teeth and crawled under Holy Sun Lang Mo's crotch like a dog. Haha. Holy Sun Lang Emo and the surrounding vicious barbarians all laughed. Listening to the laughter, Emo Tao's face turned green and white, his chest rising and falling. Next, the remaining few totem warriors also crawled under Holy Sun Lang Mo's crotch with humiliation. In the end, only Shui Ruo and Yi Guqin were left. Shui Ruo clenched her teeth, her eyes filled with tears. Shui Ruo, hurry up, do you want to live or not? Emo Tao hurriedly shouted. At this time, Holy Sun Lang Emo retracted his legs, and said in a cold tone, "Who said I'm going to let this little girl go?" This. Emo Tao's expression changed. Shui Ruo's pretty face also suddenly changed. She was struggling whether she should do such a humiliating thing. But now, she even lost this glimmer of hope. TSK, such a fresh little girl. How can I let her go? Holy Sun Lang Emo revealed a cruel smile. Shui Ruo's delicate body trembled, looking at Emo Tao with tears in her eyes. Emo Tao's face was solemn. Although he liked Shui Ruo, if he interfered he would definitely be killed by Holy Sun Lang Emo. His expression was struggling, but he didn't dare to stand up. Seeing this, Shui Ruo smiled bitterly. Her heart was already in despair. Holy Sun Lang Emo smiled coldly. His eyes fell on Yi Guqin sitting on the ground, and couldn't help but frown. You brat, aren't you afraid of death? Yi Guqin didn't even lift his eyelids. Holy Sun Lang Emo, what is it? As soon as the words came out, everyone's face froze. Chapter 527. Who was Holy Sun Wolf Demon? The surrounding vicious barbarians couldn't believe their ears. They dug their ears with their fingers as if they were hallucinating. Although Holy Sun Wolf Demon was not at the top among the Holy Suns, he was very famous. Especially after he became a vicious barbarian, he became a fearsome figure. Facing such a ferocious Holy Sun, he actually dared to say such words. Everyone thought this boy was crazy. You're courting death. Emo Tao shook his head and looked at Yi Guqin as if he was looking at a dead man. Holy Sun Wolf Demon was so angry that he laughed. Haha, interesting. It's cool to be a hero in front of a beauty, but have you thought about the consequences? As soon as he said this, the group of vicious barbarians sneered. They couldn't wait to see the scene of Yi Guqin being torn to pieces by Holy Sun Wolf Demon. Even Shui Ruo slightly opened her pink lips and looked at Yi Guqin in surprise. She couldn't understand how this ordinary boy had the courage to speak to Holy Sun Wolf Demon with such an attitude. Feeling the surprised, disdainful eyes, Yi Guqin was a little dispirited. He had already lost count of the number of saints he had killed. Holy Sun Wolf Demon really couldn't arouse his interest. Holy Sun Wolf Demon's aura was not as good as Shui Wuchang of the Blood Barbarian tribe, let alone the Holy Sons of the big tribes. Lei Jiuyo, Golden Sun Holy Sun, and the others could press Holy Sun Wolf Demon to the ground with one hand. Boy, do you know how you'll die? You'll be torn to pieces by me. Holy Sun Wolf Demon's eyes were bloodthirsty. He slowly raised his hands. The fingernails on his 10 fingers slowly elongated and turned into 10 sharp white bone spurs. Looking at Holy Sun Wolf Demon's actions, the surrounding vicious barbarians were excited and cruel. They had seen Holy Sun Wolf Demon tear a divine soul expert close to the Holy Sun level into pieces with his sharp fingers. His method was extremely cruel. Emo Tao looked on coldly. Although he was still in danger, Yi Guqin obviously attracted all of Holy Sun Wolf Demon's attention. Shui Ruo's face was extremely pale, and her delicate body was trembling. Die. Holy Sun Lang Mo's figure flashed like a demon wolf king, surging with an extremely strong baleful aura. Shui Ruo covered her eyes with her tender hands. She couldn't bear to see the scene of Yi Guqin's tragic death. Sigh, Yi Guqin sighed softly. He was too lazy to make a move. Sorry to trouble you, Brother Eagle, Yi Guqin said calmly. Leave it to Grandpa Condor. Grandpa Condor can vent my anger. The divine condor cawed. It had been treated like a pet by Shui Ruo these days, but it couldn't resist. He could only vent his anger on this group of vicious barbarians. Die. The divine condor flapped its wings and yelled. However, in the eyes of outsiders, it was just a fist-sized little red bird that was crying out in a childish voice. Humph, what a joke! Holy Sun Wolf Demon sneered, and his claw directly grabbed towards Yi Guqin's head. The divine condor spread its wings, and a monstrous scarlet flame swept out. When this flame appeared, Holy Sun Wolf Demon's face changed color instantly. Fifth-rank demonic beast. An incredulous voice came out from Holy Sun Wolf Demon's mouth. A fifth-rank demonic beast was comparable to the existence of life and death chamber. Although Holy Sun Wolf Demon was strong, he was only in the 9 transformations of God Soul. There was a world of difference between the life and death chamber. Wolf God protection. Holy Sun Wolf Demon roared like a wolf, and hurriedly performed his last defensive move. The demon wolf totem on his chest suddenly bloomed with black light, and turned into a translucent black light shield around his body. On the light shield, a pitch-black demon wolf totem vaguely appeared. Seeing this, a trace of disdain appeared in the divine condor's eyes. With a flap of its wings, intense flames surged, forming an incomparably hot fireball that shot towards Holy Sun Langmo. Swoosh! Like a flaming meteor falling from the sky, Holy Sun Langmo let out a painful howl. His entire body flew out and spun in the air. In the end, he barely managed to land on his feet, causing the ground to crack. Puff! Holy Sun Wolf Demon's body shook, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. His whole body was scorched black. Dead silence. Everyone's mouths were opened silently, but no sound came out. Those vicious barbarians were stunned. Their leader was still aggressive, and his murderous aura rushed forward. But in a moment he was blown away, and he looked so embarrassed. Mo Tao's eyes were about to pop out, and his mouth was open so wide that it could swallow an egg. Shui Ruo slowly retracted her hand, and her rosy little mouth opened, staring blankly at the little red bird flying in the air. She had never thought that the little red bird in her arms, which she had ravaged like a pet, was actually a 5th-rank demonic beast. Damn it! Holy Sun Wolf Demon's face was ashen, as if he had been smeared with a layer of ashes. He was famous among the vicious barbarians, but today he had suffered such a big setback and was in such a sorry state. If he didn't kill Yi Guqin, he would not be able to calm down. What are you all doing? Go! Holy Sun Wolf Demon shouted angrily. The 30 vicious barbarians around him hesitated, but because of Holy Sun Wolf Demon's ferocity, they could only bite the bullet and go. Holy Sun Wolf Demon stared at the divine eagle with a dignified look. He couldn't defeat a 5th-rank demonic beast, but he knew he could barely take a few moves. As long as he could kill Yi Guqin, he would leave immediately. Seeing this, the divine eagle flapped its wings, and flames surged in all directions. Immediately, some of the vicious barbarians were burned by the flames, and they howled in pain. Holy Sun Wolf Demon also took action, trying to suppress the divine eagle. Be careful! Shui Ruo saw more than 10 vicious barbarians rushing toward Yi Guqin, and she couldn't help but shout. Yi Guqin's face was indifferent. He didn't even take the Holy Sun seriously, so these vicious barbarians in the 6th or 7th transformation were no bigger than ants. Yi Guqin sat on the ground with his legs crossed, and didn't move. You dare to provoke the leader, die! The 10 vicious barbarians rushed toward Yi Guqin with their swords and spears. Yi Guqin directly activated the meteorite demonic butterfly in his sea of consciousness. A transparent starry soul wave suddenly poured out in torrents. And Yi Guqin controlled it very well, so it didn't affect Shui Ruo and the others, but only swept toward the vicious barbarians. Accompanied by miserable howls, the sea of consciousness of those vicious barbarians was directly shattered. More than 10 vicious barbarians fell to the ground and died instantly, bleeding from their 7 orifices. This. Shui Ruo and Emo Tao were both stunned. But they didn't feel the soul wave, so they didn't know how those vicious barbarians died. Shui Ruo's eyes sparkled. She felt that the death of those vicious barbarians definitely had something to do with Yi Guqin. On the other side, the divine eagle showed its ferocious power, and completely vented its anger in the past few days. Let's go. Seeing that the situation was hopeless, Holy Sun Wolf Demon gritted his teeth, and wanted to escape. You want to escape from me? No way. The divine eagle's body emitted a bright red light. Its whole body seemed to be burning, and finally, with a swoosh, it shot out like a sharp arrow and pierced through Holy Sun Wolf Demon's chest. A ferocious and awe-inspiring chosen son had fallen. After death, his eyes were still wide open and obviously he couldn't believe that he was killed by such a little red bird. Chapter 528. Looking at the Holy Sun Lang Emo who died with a black hole in his chest, Emo Tinga's eyes were wide open. Emo Tao, Shui Ruo, and the others were all dazed. A notorious Holy Sun had died just like that? Died so easily? Shui Ruo and the others felt that it was unreal, as if they were dreaming. After the dust settled, only Shui Ruo, Yi Guqin, the Divine Eagle, Emo Tao, and a few totem warriors were left. However, the way everyone looked at Yi Guqin had changed. To be precise, they looked at the little red bird on his shoulder. They didn't expect that this young man, who looked like a homeless barbarian, would have a 5th-ranked demonic beast. This was a great opportunity. Even Emo Tao was looking at the divine condor with a hint of passion in his eyes. If he could get the loyalty of a 5th-ranked demonic beast, it would be like having a life and death chamber fighter. But Emo Tao was just thinking about it. As for Shui Ruo, she was staring at the divine eagle with stars in her eyes. Damn it! Why does this girl look like she wants to eat me? The divine eagle's feathers stood up. Let's pack up and hurry, Yi Guqin said. Although he wasn't afraid of those vicious barbarians, they were still a hindrance. Yi Guqin only wanted to reach the water tribe as soon as possible and find a way to enter the 5 Elements temple. Emo Tao and the others came back to their senses. After packing up, they hurried on, fearing that they would run into vicious barbarians again. Along the way, Emo Tao's arrogant attitude was gone. At the same time, he looked at Yi Guqin with a hint of fear. Previously he had repeatedly provoked Yi Guqin. If Yi Guqin had wanted to make a fuss about it, the divine condor could have burned him to ashes with a single breath of fire. But obviously, Emo Tao thought too much. In Yi Guqin's eyes, Emo Tao didn't exist at all. He was like a lion. Would he care about an ant under his feet? Emo Tao breathed a sigh of relief, but it was replaced by a kind of grievance. With a 5th-ranked demonic beast, even if Emo Tao returned to the water tribe, he couldn't teach Yi Guqin a lesson. As for Shui Ruo, perhaps it was because Emo Tao didn't have the courage to save her at the critical moment. Therefore her attitude towards Emo Tao was also somewhat distant. Instead, he was more curious about Yi Guqin and the divine condor. When Emo Tao saw all of this, his expression became even gloomier. Big brother Dugu, why are you going to the water tribe? Shui Ruo and Yi Guqin were chatting. Yi Guqin directly changed his name to Dugu Wubai. In any case, no one in the barbarian race knew his name. Yi Guqin paused for a moment. Without hiding anything he said, I'm looking for Dragoness. He's actually looking for Her Highness the Saintess. Shui Ruo's pretty eyes revealed a trace of surprise. The holy sons and holy daughters had an extraordinary status in the barbarian tribe. Ordinary barbarian tribe members could only see them a few times a year. Dragoness is the most honorable saintess of our tribe. She's not someone you can meet just because you want to. On the back of the wildebeest, Emo Tao saw the intimate atmosphere between Shui Ruo and Yi Guqin. He couldn't help but feel angry. But because of the divine condor, he didn't dare to be too presumptuous. He could only interrupt in a sarcastic manner. Shui Ruo pouted and didn't want to talk to Emo Tao. Yi Guqin smiled carelessly and said, If I want to see her, she will naturally come. After all, Dragoness's life was saved by Yi Guqin. Moreover, Dragoness still needed Yi Guqin's tongue snake totem to help her totem evolve. Dragoness should be overjoyed that Yi Guqin took the initiative to look for her. How could she not meet him? But in the eyes of the totem warriors of the water tribe, these words seemed to be overestimating himself. That big brother Dugu, even if you have a rank 5 monster, you may not be qualified to meet Her Highness the Dragon Lady. Not everyone can meet her, Shui Ruo said carefully. She was afraid of hurting Yi Guqin's self-esteem. Yi Guqin had a rank 5 monster. It was naturally different. But in the water tribe, there were rank 5 monsters. There were even peak rank 5 monsters that were comparable to the Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge realm. Yi Guqin wanted to rely on a rank 5 monster to meet Dragoness. Obviously, it was still not enough. Yi Guqin shook his head slightly and didn't say anything more. Emotao secretly sneered. That, big brother Dugu, you said you wanted to meet Her Highness the Dragon Lady. Shui Ruo remembered something. Shui Ruo suddenly said. What is it? Yi Guqin asked. It seems that someone from the Tuoba family came to ask for Her Highness the Dragon Lady's hand in marriage. Shui Ruo said and looked at Yi Guqin. In her opinion, Yi Guqin should have a longing for Dragoness. After all, Dragoness's beauty was not only in the water tribe, but also in the entire barbarian tribe. Such a beauty would naturally be surrounded by countless men from the barbarian tribe. In Shui Ruo's eyes, Yi Guqin should be one of them. Tuoba family. Yi Guqin frowned slightly. Although he didn't know much about the Tuoba family, Tuoba Shang was a member of the Tuoba family. Moreover, the Tuoba family seemed to have an extraordinary position in the barbarian tribe. Compared to the 5 elements barbarian tribe and other large tribes, they had a stronger foundation. We'll talk about it when the time comes, Yi Guqin said lightly. Shui Ruo, do you think he can get the Dragon Lady's attention? Emotao saw and sneered. In his eyes, it was impossible to get the Dragon Lady's attention with just a rank 5 demonic beast. Can you speak less? If it weren't for Brother Dugu, we would have been killed by Holy Sun Lang Mo. Shui Ruo frowned. Although Holy Sun Lang Mo said that he would let Emotao and the others go, with his ferocious character, how could he keep his words? Emotao's face was ugly and he didn't say anything more, but the hand holding the reins was full of blue veins. For the rest of the journey, Emotao didn't say a word. On the other hand, Shui Ruo chattered like an oriole and answered Yi Guqin. Yi Guqin responded casually, but in his heart, he was thinking about the 5 Elements Temple. Just like that, another 3 days passed. Finally, they arrived at the 5 Elements Land, the encampment of the water tribe Cloud Dream Lake. Yi Guqin got out of the carriage and looked around. In front of him was a vast basin. There were many lakes and swamps in the basin that were connected to each other. White mist shrouded the entire basin. There were also rainbows that appeared in the mist. It was a peaceful and tranquil paradise. Is this the great marsh of Cloud Dream? Yi Guqin was also a little surprised. That vast white mist was not just mist, but more like some kind of formation. Obviously, this Cloud Dream Lake was also covered by a protective formation. At the same time, Yi Guqin could feel that the water vapor that permeated between heaven and earth was very dense. It was very beneficial for cultivating water-type totems and cultivation techniques. No wonder the water tribe chose to be here. Big brother Dugu, why don't you come with us? You killed Holy Sun Wolf Demon. That's not a small contribution, Shui Ruo said considerately. Emotao frowned, but he couldn't say anything, because this was indeed the truth. Just as Yi Guqin and the others were approaching the edge of the basin, suddenly, they discovered that there were many water tribe figures at the edge, and a blue-robed old man was standing in the middle. Why are there so many people here? The 6 elders are also here. Are they waiting for someone? Emotao was surprised. Could it be that they are waiting for Brother Dugu? Shui Ruo suddenly said. In her eyes, Yi Guqin was extremely mysterious, and he even had a rank 5 demonic beast accompanying him. If it was said that he was just a wandering barbarian, even Shui Ruo didn't believe it. Emotao's heart thumped, and his face froze. It can't be right? If that was the case, then Yi Guqin was far from someone he could provoke. Thinking of this, Emotao couldn't help but tremble, feeling uneasy. Yi Guqin secretly frowned. He had not used the communication jade to contact Dragon Lady. This group of water tribe people was obviously not here to welcome him. Chapter 529. Emotao's face was gloomy and his heart was restless. If the 6 elders were really waiting for Yi Guqin here, then Emotao would be in big trouble. But since he was already here, he could only brace himself. Emotao, Shui Rua, and the others brought Yi Guqin to the edge of the swamp. 6th elder. Emotao and the others bowed to the blue-robed elder. The elders had an extraordinary status in the barbarian tribe. The blue-robed elder nodded slightly and looked straight ahead as if he didn't care about them at all. Emotao's eyes lit up. Could it be that the 6 elders weren't waiting for Dugu Wubai? That Lord Elder, Big Brother Dugu killed Holy Sun Lang, Emo Shui Rua said with a strange look in her eyes. Oh. Until now, the blue-robed elder's eyes showed a hint of surprise. But that was it. 6th elder, he has a 5th-order demonic beast. Emotao seemed to want to confirm Yi Guqin's situation and said, "Is that so?" The blue-robed elder looked at Yi Guqin, his eyes still indifferent. Although some of the surrounding water tribe people were surprised. But the blue-robed elder was a spiritual bridge of heaven and earth existence. A 5th-order demonic beast was nothing in his eyes. Seeing this, Shui Rua had a strange look in her eyes and couldn't help but ask, "Lord Elder, aren't you here to welcome Big Brother Dugu? I don't know who he is. All of you move aside and don't hinder me from receiving the guest." The blue-robed elder scolded and frowned slightly. Shui Rua's face turned ugly when she heard this. The rest of the water tribe people also looked at Shui Rua and Yi Guqin with slight ridicule. This was a big loss of face. Emotao's heart was bursting with joy. It turned out that the 6 elders weren't waiting for Dugu Wubai. He had been on tenterhooks earlier, fearing that Dugu Wubai might have some special background. Now that he thought about it, he was just scaring himself. As for the rank 5 demonic beast, it was probably just a coincidence that he obtained it. When he thought of this, Emotao couldn't help but straighten his back a little, and a relieved smile appeared on his face. Shui Rua and the others, on the other hand, leaned to the side in embarrassment. Her small face revealed a trace of embarrassment. Being reprimanded like this, Shui Rua's eyes became slightly misty. Hee, Shui Rua, I've already said it. What kind of background could he possibly have? The 6 clan elders are all big shots. How could they possibly be here to welcome him? Emotao's tone carried a hint of ridicule. After knowing that Yi Guqin had no background, Emotao was no longer afraid of him. Even if there was a 5th-ranked demonic beast, would it dare to attack him in the territory of the water tribe? Emotao wanted to laugh. He felt that he had placed too much importance on this wandering barbarian. But Shui Rua gritted her teeth, wanting to argue. This was because Yi Guqin had always been very mysterious in her heart, as if he was shrouded in a layer of fog. But now he was actually just an ordinary person. This caused Shui Rua to feel slightly disappointed. Yi Guqin looked on indifferently. He didn't care about the so-called face. He only came to the water tribe to find the dragon lady. Thinking of this, Yi Guqin quietly took out the communication jade slip left behind by the dragon lady and sent out the message of his arrival. Presumably, the dragon lady would arrive soon. Yi Guqin stood there quietly and waited. Emotao, Shui Rua, and the others didn't leave either. They all wanted to know who the 6 clan elders were. Not long after, a group of people came from afar. The leader was a pot-bellied middle-aged man wearing an exquisite beast skin. When the blue-robed old man saw the middle-aged man, he cupped his hands and said, "This old man is Yu Lang. Greetings to the Tuoba family's envoy." It's the Tuoba family's envoy. Emotao and Shui Rua were surprised. In the barbarian tribe, the 5 Elements Temple was at the top. Below the 5 Elements Temple were the Tuoba and Mulan ancient barbarian families. Below them were the 5 Elements Barbarian Tribe, Wind Tribe, Lightning Tribe, and so on. Finally, there were the Soul Barbarian Tribe, Beast Barbarian Tribe, and other second-tier tribes. It could be said that the Tuoba family had an extraordinary status in the barbarian tribe. Even the water tribe had to treat them with respect. "Elder Yu Lang, it's been a while." The Tuoba envoy smiled faintly. Although his cultivation was only at the life and death threshold and couldn't be compared to Yu Lang, he was still the Tuoba family's envoy. Even Yu Lang didn't put on airs. The Tuoba family's arrival brings light to the water tribe's humble dwelling. Yu Lang smiled. Haha, our Tuoba family is very sincere this time. In a few days, our young master Tuoba Lai will come to ask for the dragon lady's hand in marriage. The envoy said. What? Tuoba Lai is coming? He's the Tuoba family's strongest saint son other than Tuoba Shang. I heard that he's also a powerful Triple Crown champion. The envoy's words made the water tribe's people exclaim in surprise. Tuoba Lai didn't participate in the battle in the ancient desolate forbidden zone, but it didn't mean that he wasn't strong. Yu Lang's expression was a little awkward. He knew that the dragon lady wouldn't want to marry the Tuoba family's saint son. Haha, the dragon lady is the apple of our eye. Our Mulan family also wants to take her away. At that moment, another group of people walked over from afar. It's the Mulan family. The water tribe's people were a little confused. This was getting interesting. The envoy of the Mulan family glanced at the envoy of the Tuoba family coldly. The Tuoba family wanted to use this opportunity to rope in the water tribe. How could the Mulan family just sit back and watch? Our saint son Murangxiu of the Mulan family will be coming soon. The envoy of the Mulan family said. It's Murangxiu. He's also a famous saint of the Mulan family. Some of the water tribe's people sighed. Both Tuoba Lai and Murangxiu were top-notch saints. Yu Lang's forehead was covered in cold sweat. It was difficult for him to be sandwiched between the two great barbarian families. Although the water tribe was a peacemaker, they didn't want to get involved in the battle between the two great families. Since that's the case, let the dragon lady choose herself. Will she choose our young master Tuoba or your Murangxiu? The envoy of the Tuoba family said arrogantly. The two great barbarian families were at loggerheads. The water tribe's people didn't dare to say anything. Shui Ruo, let's go. The matters of these big shots have nothing to do with us. Emo Tao waved his hand. Shui Ruo's face turned gloomy. She nodded but realized that Yi Guchen was still standing at the same spot. Emo Tao frowned and said, Why are you still standing here? Haven't you embarrassed yourself enough? Brother Dugu, let's go. Shui Ruo said. I'm waiting for someone. Yi Guchen said calmly. Waiting for someone? Who are you waiting for? Are you waiting for the honorable dragon lady in your heart? Emo Tao shook his head and sneered. Shui Ruo sighed. She thought that Dugu Wubai was mysterious. However, she didn't think that he could win the dragon lady's heart over to Obalai and Murangxiu. However, Shui Ruo didn't say anything. She had already made Yi Guchen lose face by speaking rashly just now. So she wouldn't say anything now. She didn't want to hurt this youngster's self-esteem. Yi Guchen didn't say anything. At this moment, a beautiful figure floated over from the depths of Yunmeng Lake. She looked like a fairy. She was wearing a long blue dress that outlined her slender figure. Her skin was crystal clear, as if it was carved out of ice. Between her aqua blue hair, there were two small and exquisite jade-like horns, giving this woman a mysterious and noble feeling. She was the Dragon Lady. It's the Dragon Lady. The Dragon Lady is here. All the members of the water tribe exclaimed. Their eyes sparkled as they bowed. Even the Yulong race elder nodded his head. Hee, it seems that the Dragon Lady is here to see me. Messenger Tuoba laughed proudly and puffed out his chest. Emo Tao and Shui Ruo also bowed to greet her. Emo Tao saw Yi Guchen from the corner of his eye and scolded softly. What are you doing? Why aren't you bowing to greet the Dragon Lady? Yi Guchen didn't seem to have heard him. He looked at the lady who floated over. After returning to the water tribe, the Dragon Lady seemed to have regained her honorable temperament. It was simply unbelievable. Previously, it was also this dragon girl who had volunteered to be his maidservant. Now the maid was finally here. The dragon girl looked straight ahead. She did not even look at messengers Tuoba and the others. Instead, she went straight to Yi Guchen. She pursed her lips and smiled charmingly. Why are you only here now, Mr. Dugu? Her voice was soft and gentle, making one's heart flutter. However, as soon as these words were spoken, Everyone around was dumbstruck. Mo Tao, who was beside Yi Guqin, froze on the spot as if he was struck by lightning. He seemed to have lost his mind, as if he had lost his soul. Chapter 530. The Dragon Lady had the bloodline of the water dragon. She was the most respected saintess of the water tribe. Regardless of bloodline, strength, or temperament, the Dragon Lady was one of the best in the entire barbarian tribe. That was why the Tuoba family and Mulan family had come to propose marriage. Of course, there might be a deeper meaning behind it, but the Dragon Lady's excellence was undeniable. The Dragon Girl, who had always been high and mighty among the water tribe, and was like an ice goddess, was actually treating an ordinary berserker boy with such an attitude and tone. It was simply unbelievable. What was even more puzzling was the hidden bitterness in the Dragon Lady's words. It was as if she had been abandoned and had stayed in the house for a long time. Mo Tao could not believe what he was seeing. He had even mocked Yi Guqin, asking if he was waiting for the Dragon Lady. Now the Dragon Lady had really appeared. Judging from her tone, she was here to look for Yi Guqin. Shui Ruo widened her eyes and looked at the youth beside her. She had blamed herself for hurting Yi Guqin's pride. Now that she thought about it, Shui Ruo's cheeks were burning. Ha! Seeing the Dragon Lady's attitude, Yi Guqin smiled faintly. How could he not know the Dragon Lady's impatience? The Dragon Lady rolled her eyes coquettishly at Yi Guqin. Her beautiful blue eyes were filled with resentment. Her serene blue serpent totem still needed Yi Guqin's tongue snake totem to evolve. And Yi Guqin had said that he would come to the water tribe. But she did not expect it to take so long. Luckily, the Dragon Lady was patient. Otherwise, she would have to look for Yi Guqin personally. Since you're here, follow me in. The Dragon Lady did not avoid him. She walked up lightly and pulled Yi Guqin's sleeve while Mo Tao was in a daze. Yi Guqin nodded faintly. That's impossible. How could you know the Dragon Lady? Mo Tao could not figure it out. He could not help but ask. Yi Guqin frowned slightly. Seeing this, the Dragon Maiden's face turned cold. Other people did not know, but Dragon Lady knew that Yi Guqin had another identity. He was the Five-Crown King who had swept everyone. He was not someone anyone could humiliate. In addition, the ancestral totem was very useful for the Dragon Girl's transformation, so she couldn't ignore it. Who are you? How dare you act so impudently here? The Dragoness was quite imposing when she was angry. With a gentle wave of her jade-like hand, she swept Mo Tao away like trash. Pooh! Mo Tao let out a shrill cry as he spat out a mouthful of blood, and his figure was blasted flying over 30 m. A few of his breastbones were broken, and he collapsed on the ground like a dead dog. The surrounding members of the water tribe shrank their necks. Dragon Lady had a gentle temperament. Normally, she would not get angry, and she would not be so heavy-handed. Clearly, that ordinary youth had an extraordinary place in the Dragoness's heart. Dragoness turned to look at Shui Ruo, who was beside Yi Guqin. Shui Ruo's eyes trembled slightly and her cheeks turned red. There was both nervousness and excitement. This was the first time she was facing the saintess of her tribe. A friend I met on the way. Not bad, Yi Guqin said casually. He did not praise her, nor did he specifically say anything. He believed that the Dragoness would understand. Dragon Lady nodded slightly and said with a smile like a spring breeze, "You can follow me from now on." Really? Thank you, Your Highness. Shui Ruo was so excited that she jumped 3 feet high. If she followed the saintess, her status in the water tribe would be different in the future. Shui Ruo's eyes sparkled as she looked at Yi Guqin. She knew that Dragon Lady's actions were to express her goodwill to Dugu Wubai. Thank you, Brother Dugu, Shui Ruo said sweetly. Yi Guqin smiled and nodded. Shui Ruo did not know that the benefits of being taken care of by Yi Guqin were not just a little bit. Just as Yi Guqin was about to follow Dragon Lady into Yunmeng Lake, a voice that was suppressing his anger came out from Envoy Tuoba's mouth. Your Highness, young Master Tuoba has taken a fancy to you now. It's better for you to keep yourself clean. Envoy Tuoba was a little embarrassed. He thought that Dragon Lady was here to welcome him when she appeared. In the end, she was here to welcome a young man. She did not even care about Envoy Tuoba. How could Envoy Tuoba hide his face? On the other side, the envoy of the Muron family also looked at Yi Guchen in surprise. He could not understand how Dragon Lady was related to this ordinary young man. Dragon Lady's face turned cold when she heard what Envoy Tuoba said. She said calmly, "Firstly, I don't belong to young Master Tuoba Lai. Secondly, if you want to ask for my hand in marriage, it's fine. In 3 days, I'll set up an arena in the Water Tribe to find my groom. Whoever wins first place will be qualified to be my husband," Dragon Lady said. Her words caused an uproar. Many of the Water Tribe members did not know about it. Only Elder Yu Lang smiled bitterly. As one of the 6 elders, he naturally knew about it. This was the only way that the Water Tribe could think of to not offend the 2 barbarian families. Envoy Tuoba's face changed slightly when he heard that. However, he still smiled and said, "Haha, Your Highness, why do you have to do this? Is there anyone who can defeat young Master Tuoba in the arena?" Many of the Water Tribe members agreed with Envoy Tuoba's words. Tuoba Lai was second only to Tuoba Shang in the Tuoba family. Although there were a few saints in the Water Tribe, it would be difficult for them to compete with Tuoba Lai. So what if he's Tuoba Lai? Do you think young Master Mulanxio is afraid of him? The envoy of the Muron family sneered. Mulanxio's reputation was not weak either. The crowd could tell that the groom contest was only a show. In the end, only Tuoba Lai and Mulanxio were qualified to compete. When they thought that the honorable saintess of their tribe was going to be taken away by one of these 2, some of the Water Tribe men felt uncomfortable. The Dragon Lady's face darkened when she heard what they said. For some reason, her beautiful eyes turned to Yi Guchen. Yi Guchen was stunned. He felt that he had come at the wrong time. "Can I leave first?" Yi Guchen joked. "No, please come in, young Master Dugu." The Dragon Lady smiled. Her smile was charming. However, why did it feel so fake? The Dragon Lady left Envoy Tuoba and the others behind and led Yi Guchen and the Divine Eagle into Yunmeng Lake. Yu Lang smiled bitterly. He did not expect that the young man he had neglected was related to the Dragon Lady. "Envoys, please stay in Yunmeng Lake for the time being. I will treat you well." Yu Lang cupped his hands. My young master will be here in 3 days." Envoy Tuoba snorted. Envoy Mulanxio also said that the Mulanxio religious order would be here in 3 days. Then, Yu Lang led the 2 families into Yunmeng Lake. Shui Rua was surrounded by Water Tribe people. They were all asking about Yi Guchen. "Shui Rua, who is that young man?" That's right. His looks are very ordinary, and he doesn't have any cultivation aura. For Her Highness to treat him like this, just who is he?" The people around them were chattering away. Vaguely, they were trying to please Shui Rua. Shui Rua could not stop giggling. She felt that she had never been so popular before. As for Mo Tao, he stood alone in the distance. He was struggling to stand up. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. His body was covered in dust. Several of his ribs were broken and aching. From time to time, some Water Tribe people would cast a playful look at him. Shui Rua and Mo Tao also came with Yi Guchen. But the result was completely different. Obviously, Mo Tao had offended someone he should not have. "I hate him." Mo Tao trembled. He was very sad. A kind of hatred for Yi Guchen, mixed with regret, gushed out from his heart. However, it was not hard to imagine that he had made the Dragon Lady unhappy. In the future, his position in the Water Tribe would be worrying. Chapter 531. Yi Guchen followed Dragon Lady into Yunmeng Lake. As the surrounding thick fog dispersed, the scenery within the Cloud Dream Swamp also came into view. The lake was shimmering and the water was misty. It was like a paradise. It matched the calm attitude of the water people. Dragon Lady brought Yi Guchen in. There were many people from the Water Tribe around. When they saw Yi Guchen walking side by side with the Dragon Lady, they were surprised. They had never seen Dragon Lady so close to a man. Even when facing the Water People's saint, who was on the same level as her, Dragon Lady was never polite. "Yi Guchen, what do you think of the Water People's base?" Dragon Lady smiled. Although there were people around them, they were quite a distance away. Hence, Dragon Lady called out Yi Guchen's real name. Not bad. Paradise on Earth. Yi Guchen said. Yeah. It would be a pity if we were dragged into the war. Dragon Lady sighed. Looks like you're under a lot of pressure. Yi Guchen said thoughtfully. The Dragon Lady smiled bitterly and touched her forehead. Indeed, the Tuoba family has always wanted us to leave the peace party and join their war party. Do you remember Kuei Shueinji? That saint who suddenly rose up was supported by the Tuoba family. I see. Yi Guchen understood. The supporter behind Kuei Shueinji was the Tuoba family. It was so that after Kuei Shueinji took over, she could lead the water race to join the war faction. Dragon Lady frowned and said. The Tuoba family had placed all their hopes on Kuei Shueinji, but after she died in the forbidden region of desolation, the Tuoba family started to force us to marry them. However, we couldn't reject them. Yi Guchen nodded. Although the water people was strong, they were not as strong as the barbarian family. The Tuoba family wanted to unite with the Dragon Lady through marriage and pull the water race into the pro-war camp. That's why I had to do this. Dragon Lady shook her head and smiled bitterly. Yi Guchen's eyes flickered slightly. When Dragon Lady saw this, she bit her lip. It was hard for her to speak, but she still said, Dragon Lady knows that I already owe you a lot. But this time, I hope you can help me. When Dragon Lady said this, her cheeks were a little hot. Her life was saved by Yi Guchen, and she wanted Yi Guchen to transform her totem. Now they even needed Yi Guchen's help for the groom contest. Dragon Lady didn't know what to say, but there was nothing she could do. Although there were saints in the water tribe who were in love with her, they were obviously not as good as Tuoba Lai. Although Muranxiu was strong, Dragoness did not feel anything for her. Yi Guchen was not surprised. Dragon Lady was his friend, so he could help her. However, Yi Guchen did not forget his purpose in coming to the land of 5 elements. If I want to help you, that's not a problem. However, I also have something that I need your help with. Yi Guchen said solemnly. What is it? Dragon Lady's eyes brightened. I want to enter the 5 elements temple, Yi Guchen said in a low voice. When Dragon Lady heard this, her face changed. Her beautiful eyes kept changing. The 5 elements temple was the barbarians' holy land. Even saints and saintesses did not have the chance to enter. Moreover, if Yi Guchen, an outsider, was to enter the 5 elements temple, if he was discovered, the crime would not be a small one. If she accepted it, Dragon Lady would have to take a huge risk. Seeing Dragon Lady's uncertain expression, Yi Guchen looked at her calmly. He felt that he had not misjudged her. After a while, Dragon Lady's full breasts moved up and down. She sighed deeply and said, Yi Guchen, your request is really difficult. However, I agree. Yi Guchen smiled. So you must win the groom contest, Dragon Lady said confidently. Sure. However, my identity as 5 Crown King cannot be revealed for now. Is there any way to conceal it? Yi Guchen frowned slightly. In the land of the barbarians, he could not use his sword moves. It would expose his identity as an outsider. As for 5 Crown King's totem, he could not reveal it either. This way, he had very few tricks up his sleeves. No problem. My sea tribe has a wave illusion secret technique that can conceal your moves. It can even change the appearance and aura of your totem. I will teach it to you later, Dragon Lady said. Yi Guchen nodded. This way he had nothing to worry about. Just as Yi Guchen and Dragon Lady were talking, a figure appeared not far away. Dragon Lady, who is this? He looks very unfamiliar. It was a young man in a blue shirt. He looked feminine and handsome. The water-type totem power around him surged. To be able to speak to Dragon Lady as an equal, he was obviously a saint. Seeing this, Dragon Lady frowned slightly and said, He is just a friend of mine. Oh, just a friend? The young man in a blue shirt squinted his eyes and looked at Yi Guchen. When he felt that there was no aura of cultivation around him, the young man became less cautious. Dragon Lady, in the groom contest in 3 days, I will definitely get first place. I will help you fend off Tuoba Lai and Muranxiu. The young man in a blue shirt looked at Dragon Lady with a burning gaze. Although their positions were similar, Dragon Lady was still a flower in his eyes. He could only look at her from afar. And this time the groom selection arena was his last chance. Let's talk about it when you have the ability, Dragon Lady said calmly. She obviously did not like the young man in a blue shirt. The young man in a blue shirt smiled and said, Dragon Lady, in the younger generation of the Sea Tribe, almost no one can defeat me. I don't believe that I will lose to Tuoba Lai and Muranxiu. Dragon Lady shook her head and did not say anything else. She brought Yi Guchen to her residence. Her Highness the Dragon Lady brought a man to her place? Some of the surrounding aquarium people were stunned. The young man in a blue shirt's face darkened. He said calmly, some people better not overestimate themselves. Although he did not say it explicitly, everyone knew that he was referring to the young man beside Dragon Lady. Yi Guchen ignored him as if he did not hear anything. The young man in a blue shirt's face darkened as he watched them leave. Sorry for making a fool of himself. His name is Stormy Wave Saint. Among the saints of the Sea Tribe, he is the strongest. Hence, he is a little arrogant and thinks that he is extraordinary, Dragon Lady said with a sigh. As the Five-Crown King, Yi Guchen did not usually show his strength. He even hid with the blood armor. As for Stormy Wave Saint, although he was strong in the Sea Tribe, he was barely strong in the Barbarian Tribe. However, he thought that he was very strong. Hence, he always treated Dragon Lady as his exclusive property, and did not allow others to get close to her. In comparison, Yi Guchen was the one who was truly reserved and unfazed by favor or humiliation. Yi Guchen did not mind. He did not care about Stormy Wave Saint. Let's go to my residence. I will teach you the wave illusion secret skill, Dragon Lady said. Her fair face blushed. After all, it was her first time bringing a man into her residence. It was a little awkward. Yi Guchen nodded calmly. Chapter 532. The Dragon Lady's residence was located in the depths of Yunming Lake. The lake was as clear as a mirror and as transparent as a crystal. There were spiritual birds and beasts in the surroundings. It was very peaceful. Gia Grandpa Condor sees a beauty. The divine eagle, who was standing on Yi Guchen's shoulder, saw the elegant white crane by the lake. Its eyes turned red. Like a hungry wolf that saw a lamb, it flapped its wings and rushed towards the crane. Yi Guchen followed the Dragon Lady to the loft by the lake. A warm breeze blew through the canopy, bringing with it a woman's fragrance. The Dragon Lady was slightly embarrassed, but she still calmed down and said, the wave illusion secret art is a secret art of the Water Tribe. It's not easy to cultivate. You only have 3 days. The Dragon Lady hesitated. She was afraid that Yi Guchen wouldn't be able to use the wave illusion secret art in 3 days. It's okay, Yi Guchen said casually. He had cultivated many secret arts, including the soul-devouring secret art, the soul-burning secret art, and the soul-tempering secret art. They all had their strengths. The wave illusion secret art wasn't easy to cultivate, but it wasn't difficult for Yi Guchen. The Dragon Lady shook her head at Yi Guchen's casual attitude. She believed that when Yi Guchen really came in contact with the wave illusion secret art, he would know how hard it was to learn it. The Dragon Lady found it hard to believe that Yi Guchen could learn it in 3 days. Even the Dragon Lady had to spend half a month before she was able to enter the sect. Next, the Dragon Lady taught the wave illusion secret art to Yi Guchen. However, in the Water Tribe, the news that the Dragon Lady brought Yi Guchen into her residence had spread like wildfire. The Stormy Wave Saint was naturally gloomy. At the same time, the Tuoba family's messenger didn't look too good either. He could imagine how the young man beside the Dragon Lady would be treated when Tuoba Lai arrived in 3 days. Shui Rua had a worried look on her face. She didn't know what Yi Guchen was capable of. She thought that Yi Guchen could only rely on the divine condor. While Mo Tao was jealous, he was also cold. He knew that with Tuoba Lai's character, he would never allow anyone else to touch the woman he fancied. Dugawu Bai, let's see how you'll endure Tuoba Lai's wrath in 3 days. Mo Tao said through gritted teeth. Right now, he was in a rather pitiful state in the water race. He wasn't liked at all. Time flowed by, and 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. I wonder how Yi Guchen's training is going? Dragon Lady was in another room in the attic. Today was already the third day. If Yi Guchen still hadn't mastered the secret art of wave illusion, then the means he could use were undoubtedly very few. Although Tuoba Lai was not as good as Tuoba Shang, he was still one of the best among the saint children. If Yi Guchen could not use any tricks, it would be very dangerous to deal with him. After thinking about it for a while, Dragon Lady went to Yi Guchen's practice room. When he opened the door, he was surprised to find Yi Guchen sitting cross-legged on the floor. His brows were furrowed as if he was thinking about something. Seeing this, Dragon Lady sighed in her heart. As she expected, Yi Guchen was stumped by the secret art of wave illusion. However, no matter how talented Yi Guchen was, how could he master such a complicated secret art in 3 days? Yi Guchen, if you really can't do it, then don't force yourself. Just act according to the circumstances, Dragon Lady advised. Yi Guchen shook his head and sighed. Unfortunately, this is also something that can't be forced. After all, there are only 3 days. Dragon Lady advised. Unfortunately, it's not complete. There are still some flaws. Yi Guchen furrowed his brows as if he wasn't satisfied. It's nothing. Wait a minute, what did you say? Dragon Lady nodded first. However, her delicate face suddenly froze. Her beautiful eyes widened as she stared blankly at Yi Guchen. Yi Guchen did not speak. He slowly raised his hand and directly activated the Azure Dragon Totem in his body. However, this Azure Dragon Totem actually faintly transformed into another supreme totem, the Azure Spirit Dragon Python, along with the ripples of the water. This way, Yi Guchen's progenitor totem would not be exposed. Dragon Lady's mouth was wide open as her breasts rose and fell. You're a cultivation monster, Dragon Lady said through gritted teeth. Back when she cultivated the secret art of wave illusion, it took her half a month to master it. However, Yi Guchen had only cultivated it for 3 days. He was only a short distance away from complete mastery. Such terrifying cultivation perception made Dragoness envious and jealous. Although it's not complete mastery, it's barely enough, Yi Guchen said. His comprehension was not only limited to Sword Dao. Furthermore, he had consumed an epiphany leaf in the past 3 days. Such speed was nothing. Dragon Lady rolled her eyes at Yi Guchen again. She suppressed the ripples in her heart and said, "It's about time. The saints of the 2 clans should be here. Let's go to the battle arena." Yi Guchen nodded. At this moment, in the depths of Yunmeng Lake, there was a huge lake. In the middle of the lake, there was an island in the lake. Fences were built on the island to form a huge battle arena. This was the largest battle arena of the water people. It was not open on normal days. It would only be open during some important festivals, or when the saints were battling. Today, the surroundings of the battle arena were bustling with noise. Almost 80 to 90% of the members of the water tribe had come to the battle arena to watch the betrothal contest. After all, the groom contest's target was the famous Dragon Lady. Her strength and appearance were superior. She was also the goddess in the hearts of many water people men. On the high platform of the battle arena, the envoys of the Tuoba and Mulan clans were already seated. There were also a few elders of the water people and the clan leader of the water people, Shui Jinglan. The saints will be here soon. There is no suspense in today's battle, Envoy Tuoba said proudly. That's not necessarily true, Envoy Mulan said coldly. Shui Jinglan, the clan leader of the water people, looked straight ahead and did not get involved in the battle between the 2 clans. The only thing he sighed about was the Dragon Lady. She had to choose someone she did not like. Shui Rua and Mo Tao had arrived at the viewing platform. However, they did not come together. Shui Rua looked worried. Apparently, she was worried about Yi Guchen. Mo Tao's eyes were filled with coldness. He wanted to see how badly Yi Guchen would be defeated by Tuoba Lai. Not long after, a figure with a pair of wings on his back soared into the sky. His aura was extremely arrogant. He fell from the sky and landed in the battle arena. In the midst of the smoke, a burly man with a tough face appeared. The pair of wings on his back were like the wings of a dragon. They shone with a cold light. Young Master Tuoba. Envoy Tuoba quickly stood up and cupped his hands. Is that Tuoba Lai? Looking at the burly man who looked like a human-shaped iron tower, many members of the water people were shocked. It was rumored that Tuoba Lai was second only to the quadruple crown king, Tuoba Shang. It seemed like he lived up to his reputation. Just as everyone was shocked by Tuoba Lai's actions, a faint voice with a hint of mockery said, Tuoba Lai, you really like to show off. A figure walked into the battle arena. If he did not speak, no one would have noticed him. It was a young man with a delicate and pretty face. He looked a little ordinary, but the aura he faintly exuded made it clear that he was not ordinary. Young Master Mulanxio. Envoy Mulan cupped his hands as well. Mulanxio is here too. Mulanxio's arrival caused an uproar again. In the preparation area, the stormy wave saint's expression was cold and stern with a look of determination. Today neither Tuoba Lai nor Mulanxio can stop me. The dragon lady is only worthy of me. Just as the smell of gunpowder in the battle arena intensified. Not far away, the dragon lady and Yi Guchen finally arrived side by side. Chapter 533. The dragon lady was noble and elegant. Her long blue hair swayed in the wind. The pair of jade horns on her fair forehead not only ruined her beauty, but also added a strange sense of beauty to her. Compared to the dragon lady, Yi Guchen, who had disguised himself, looked very ordinary. He had bronze skin and an ordinary appearance. He did not have the aura of an expert. He was the kind of person who would not be recognized in a crowd. The two of them walked side by side. It was really out of place. I heard that the young man is called Duguwubai. I wonder how he is related to the dragon lady. That's right. There is nothing attractive about him. He has neither the looks nor the power. The people of the water tribe were very critical of the relationship between the dragon lady and Yi Guchen. Many people were whispering to each other. However, they did not talk loudly because of the dragon lady. After the dragon lady and Yi Guchen appeared, Tuoba Lai's eyes immediately focused on the dragon lady. Although the Tuoba family had planned to ask for the dragon lady's hand in marriage. However, Tuoba Lai had to admit that the dragon lady was qualified to be his wife. Looking at the dragon lady's slender waist and beautiful figure, Tuoba Lai's eyes were burning with desire. He really wanted to see how alluring this woman with the water dragon bloodline, who had a noble temperament, would be when she was pleasuring him under his body. However, in Tuoba Lai's eyes, she was an eyesore. Dragon lady, I don't like this person, Tuoba Lai said in a low voice. The dragon lady did not even look at Tuoba Lai. She brought Yi Guchen to a seat in the stands. You. Tuoba Lai frowned. He looked at Yi Guchen and said coldly, if you know what's good for you, leave the dragon lady. Yi Guchen did not react. He did not even look at Tuoba Lai. This caused everyone in the battle arena to be stunned. It was normal for the dragon lady to ignore Tuoba Lai. After all, they might be family in the future. But Yi Guchen, who looked so ordinary, dared to ignore Tuoba Lai? Gazes of sympathy and pity were directed at Yi Guchen, and they all shook their heads. It was understandable that a young man would want to perform in front of a beauty. However, it would be foolish to provoke someone who shouldn't be provoked because of this. Obviously, Yi Guchen's action of ignoring the Aqua clan was foolish. Mo Tao, who was in the crowd, couldn't suppress the smile on his face. He couldn't wait to see Yi Guchen become even more miserable than him. Shui Ruo's small face was filled with worry. Obviously, she was worried about Yi Guchen's safety. However, Yi Guchen wasn't interested in talking to Tuoba Lai. He could even defeat the quadruple crown king, Tuoba Shang. A mere Tuoba Lai could not pique his interest. However, in the eyes of outsiders, it seemed a little condescending. This person is interesting. Mulanxio chuckled and looked at Yi Guchen with interest. Although Yi Guchen couldn't attract his attention, it was good that he could provoke Tuoba Lai. Mulanxio didn't come here because he liked the dragon lady and wanted to marry her. He just wanted to stop Tuoba Lai from marrying her. Tuoba Lai was filled with anger, but he didn't act out. However, he swore that he would make Yi Guchen pay the price after the competition ended. Next, it was the Aqua clan leader's speech. The dragon lady's face was calm, but her jade-like hands were clenched tightly. Although Yi Guqian, the sword master and quintuple crown king, was present, this was an important matter that concerned her marriage. If Tuoba Lai really won, the dragon lady would have to marry Tuoba Lai even if she didn't want to. The Tuoba clan's prestige couldn't be challenged, even by the Aqua clan. With me around, it's fine, Yi Guqian said calmly, as if he had seen the nervousness in the dragon girl's eyes. His words were calm, but there was an unquestionable tone to them. Looking at Yi Guqian's ordinary face after his disguise, the dragon lady understood. What was so attractive about Yi Guqian? It was his self-restraint, confidence, and calmness. He could also make the people around him feel extremely at ease. It had to be said that as long as one was a girl, they would be greedy for such a feeling of security. It was as if Yi Guqian was the most reliable support. The competition for the groom had officially begun. Other than Tuoba Lai and Mu Lanxiu, some of the Aqua clan's saints would also participate. After all, the Aqua clan's saints admired the dragon lady a lot. How could they watch her go to an outsider? Who wants to fight? Come on. Tuoba Lai stood in the center of the battle arena. His tower-like figure gave everyone a strong sense of oppression. Mu Lanxiu smiled faintly and didn't make a move. He also wanted to see how powerful this Tuoba clan, who was second only to Tuoba Shang, was. I'll go first. Young Master Tuoba, please enlighten me. A Aqua clan's saint stepped into the battle arena. The Cloud River Saint is making a move. He's one of the top 3 saints in the Aqua clan. Some of the Aqua clan members exclaimed, Make your move. Tuoba Lai didn't even look at him. The Cloud River Saint's eyes darkened. No matter what, he was still a saint. How could he be ignored like this? Demonic ice-snapping turtle. The Yunhe Saint did not hold back at all. He immediately summoned his supreme totem. A totem that looked like a black tortoise appeared. The only difference was that the tortoise shell had icicle-like thorns on it. Ice Edge Seal. The Cloud River Saint formed a seal with both hands. Along with the supreme totem's power, he attacked with all his might towards Tuoba Lai. Tuoba Lai raised his eyelids slightly. He didn't take out his own totem. Instead, he stomped on the ground with one foot, and a thick murderous aura spread out. Without any moves, Tuoba Lai threw out a punch. Along with the black murderous aura, it collided with the Cloud River Saint. Bang! A huge shockwave spread out in the battle arena. The sound of blood being spat out could be heard. Everyone in the arena saw the Cloud River Saint's body fly out like a broken sandbag. He landed heavily on the ground, and even his chest caved in. If they weren't in the Water Tribe, Tuoba Lai would have to give them face. If the punch landed, the Cloud River Saint would probably be on the verge of death. One punch. It was just a single punch. Some of the elders of the Water Tribe didn't look too good. The Cloud River Saint was one of the top 3 saints in the Water Tribe. How could he not be able to withstand one punch from Tuoba Lai? The leader of the Water Tribe, Shui Jinglan, also looked slightly gloomy. Haha, as expected of young Master Tuoba. Envoy Tuoba laughed happily. On the other side, Muranxia's face also turned serious. Tuoba Lai's strength had exceeded her expectations. The dragon lady was nervous. She gritted her teeth and said, that was Tuoba Lai's signature body refining technique, the demonic ape transformation. He didn't even use it fully, and the Cloud River Saint was defeated. She looked at Yi Guqian uneasily. However, she saw that Yi Guqian was resting with his eyes closed, as if he didn't care at all. The dragon lady smiled bitterly. As expected of the 5-crown king, he was so confident. Chapter 534. Tuoba Lai's punch sent the Cloud River Saint Sun flying. The atmosphere in the entire battle arena became silent. The holy sons of the Water Tribe, who had been eager to give it a try, were all silenced at this moment. It was as if an invisible hand was choking their necks, and they didn't dare to make a sound. The Yunhe Sacred Prince was one of the top 3 sacred princes of the Water Tribe. Even such a saint's son was so embarrassed by Tuoba Lai's punch. What could the rest of the saints of the Water Tribe do? As for the Stormy Wave Saint's son, who was full of confidence and arrogance, He was looking at Tuoba in shock. Tuoba performance was far beyond his expectations. However, his pride did not allow him to admit this fact. Hence, his expression kept changing. No, who am I? The Cloud River Saint Sun is far from me. I might not be weaker than him. The Stormy Wave Saint Sun thought. He looked at the Dragon Lady. However, what made the Stormy Wave Saint Sun's expression freeze was that the Dragon Lady kept looking at Yi Guchen. This made the Stormy Wave Saint Sun angry, drowning his rationality. Heh, looks like no one in the Water Tribe is a match for you. Tuoba looked around. When the Water Tribe's holy sons made eye contact with him, they looked away as if they were retreating. Judging by the strength that Tuoba had displayed, they would be courting death if they went up. The leader of the Water Tribe kept a straight face. He did not expect the Water Tribe saints to be so weak that they did not even have the courage to go up. Just as the leader of the Water Tribe was feeling disappointed, a figure stepped onto the arena. It was the Stormy Wave Saint Sun. The leader of the Water Tribe finally looked better. He said, "The Stormy Wave Saint Sun is the strongest among the Water Tribe saints. I think there will be an exciting battle." "Oh, is that so?" Envoy Tuoba smiled playfully and did not say anything else. The strength that Tuoba had just displayed had intimidated everyone present. However, was that really his full strength? "Oh, you have some courage, but you are still ignorant." Tuoba expression did not change much when he saw the Stormy Wave Saint Sun. He looked at him as if he was looking at an ant. The Turbulent Wave Saint gritted his teeth and glanced at the Dragoness from the corner of his eye. The Dragon Lady finally glanced at him indifferently, but then she quickly withdrew her gaze with waning interest. Obviously, he didn't think that the Stormy Wave Saint Sun could win. "Dragoness, I will let you know that the lowly young man beside you is nothing compared to me." The Stormy Wave Saint did not hold back and directly unleashed his full strength. Two supreme totems appeared on the surface of his body. The vigorous totem power turned into two water attribute totem spirits in the air. Their auras were extraordinary. As the number one saint of the Water Tribe, the Turbulent Wave Saint was also a double champion. Although he was conceited, he did have some strength. "Tuoba, although you are strong, you will pay the price for underestimating me." After displaying his full strength, the Stormy Wave Saint Sun also inexplicably gained some confidence. His eyes couldn't help but shine with divine light, and his aura was eye-catching. "You are indeed worthy of being the first holy son of the Sea Tribe." The clan leader of the Sea Tribe smiled in satisfaction. The Tuoba emissary sneered and did not say anything. He quietly waited to watch the show. "Interesting. In that case, I will also use my true strength." Seeing this, the totem power in Tuoba's body surged. It surged out and turned into a pitch-black devil ape in the air. "It is one of Tuoba's totems, the earth-shaking demonic ape," the Dragon Lady exclaimed. Yi Guchen raised his eyelids to take a look, but there was no reaction. However, everyone present was shocked. Tuoba's performance earlier was extremely shocking. However, that was under the condition that he did not use his totem. Now that he had used his totem, how strong would Tuoba be? When the earth-shaking demonic ape totem was used, Tuoba's body also changed. His body grew taller. At the same time, black demonic runes appeared on the surface of his body. His body was surrounded by a black aura. This was Tuoba's body refining skill, the demonic ape transformation. With the help of the earth-shaking demonic ape totem, the power of the demonic ape transformation was even stronger. Come on. Similarly, it was a simple punch. Tuoba's punch carried an endless amount of evil aura. It was as if the earth-shaking demonic ape had punched at the same time. The entire battle arena rumbled and shook. Even the ground cracked. The earth-shaking demonic ape lived up to its name. The Turbulent Wave Saint's face turned slightly pale. In fact, when Tuoba used the earth-shaking demonic ape totem, the Turbulent Wave Saint already had a bad feeling. However, he could only brace himself for now. Without holding back, the Turbulent Wave Saint attacked with all his might and collided with Tuoba. Boom. It was still an earth-shattering collision. Strong shockwaves swept out in all directions. Everyone in the battle arena was paying close attention to the battle. Pucci. The Turbulent Wave Saint was in a worse state than the Yunha Saint. He flew backward and spat out blood. He felt as if his 2 rows of ribs had been shattered. He was in a sorry state as he was sent flying. Looking at the turbulent wave saint, who had been defeated by a single punch. The entire water tribe battle arena was silent. Tuobalai's strength had shocked them. Even Muranxia's gaze turned solemn. On the viewing platform, the water tribe patriarch's expression froze. The smile on his face froze. He was extremely embarrassed. The Tuoba emissary did not say anything. However, his hee-hee was enough to show his disdain for the water tribe's young saint. Sigh. The dragoness sighed softly. It was as if she had expected this. The dragoness had placed all her hopes on Yi Guchen. As for the turbulent wave saint, this battle would probably allow him to recognize himself. In the battle arena, the turbulent wave saint stood up with difficulty. His mouth was full of blood. He was in a sorry state. Tuobalai no longer looked at him. Even the dragoness's expression did not change. It was as if she had expected this. This made the turbulent wave saint extremely sullen and angry. However, he could not say anything. Because this was the truth. However, the dragoness suddenly turned her face to Yi Guchen. Her beautiful blue eyes were filled with hope. This scene made the turbulent wave saint feel extremely uncomfortable. Dragoness, although I lost miserably, do you think that guy can defeat Tuobalai? What a joke. The turbulent wave saint's heart turned cold. He walked down the stage with a sour face. Boring, really boring. Muranxiu, you go up. Let's finish this quickly so that I can marry my wife, said Tuobalai. This sentence made the faces of all the water tribe members turn ugly. The water tribe patriarch, Elder Yulong, and the others were also sullen. They were cursing the turbulent wave saint and the others in their hearts. Muranxiu sighed softly and landed on the stage. Since Brother Tuoba wants to fight, then let's do it, said Muranxiu calmly. No matter what, he was still the pride of the Muranxiu family. He was much stronger than the water tribe saint. There was no longer any contempt in Tuobalai's eyes. Although Muranxiu's strength was slightly inferior to Muranyu, he was not weak. He could not underestimate Muranxiu like he did the water tribe saint. Muranxiu took a deep breath. He must stop Tuobalai from marrying the dragoness. Judging from the current situation, he was the only one who could stop Tuobalai. As the 2 barbarian family saints fought, the atmosphere in the battle arena became heated. Chapter 535. The 2 barbarian families had extraordinary statuses. They even had seats in the 5 Elements Temple's Elder Council. The saints of the 2 families were obviously more powerful than the saints of the large families. Only powerful saints like Lei Jiuyo, Golden Sun Saint, and Feng Xiaotian could compare with the barbarian family's saints. Even the Dragon Lady would not be a match for Tuobalai and Muranxiu if her totem had not evolved. Now the battle between the 2 barbarian families' saints was extremely eye-catching. Even the water tribe members, who were a little disappointed, became spirited and focused on the battle. Only Shui Rua. The more she saw Tuobalai's strength, the more worried she became. Emo Tao's heart was filled with joy. If Tuobalai won, with his character, he would definitely attack Yi Guchen. Emo Tao could not wait to see what would happen next. In the battle arena, Tuobalai and Muranxiu stood facing each other. They did not have much to say. The 2 families had always been enemies. If it were not for the 5 Elements Temple suppressing the 2 families, the Tuoba family would have started a civil war among the barbarians. Tuobalai attacked. His fists were shockingly sharp. His every move was like the birth of a demonic ape. It shook the heavens and the earth, and the ground of the entire arena was constantly shaking. Muranxiu did not dare to hold back. She took out her own totem. Her highest totem was the Wind Shadow Wolf. It was extremely fast. Wind Step. Muranxiu moved her body like a gust of wind. Her speed was extremely fast. Yi Guchen's interest was piqued as he cast his gaze over. Muranxiu's palm emitted a green glow. It turned into a sharp wind blade and slashed towards Tuobalai. Tuobalai let out a wild roar as a baleful aura surged from his body. A thin black armor vaguely formed on the surface of his body. At the same time, A layer of black bone armor also spread out on his fist, causing his fist to look like an iron fist. Boom. After the collision, Murengxiu retreated. She moved her feet slightly to disperse the shocking force. Don't fight him head-on. Murengxiu immediately made a judgment. After using the earth-shaking demonic ape totem, Tuobalai's strength was extremely shocking. If she fought him head-on, she would only be courting death. After making her decision, Murengxiu focused on moving around. With the Wind Shadow Wolf totem's speed, the battle between her and Tuobalai was intense. Looking at the two people who were locked in battle, all the Water Tribe people in the arena held their breaths. Murengxiu was indeed the saint of the Muron family. The strength that he displayed far surpassed that of the Raging Wave Saint and the others. Everyone thought that Murengxiu might be able to fight with Tuobalai. Although Tuobalai is powerful, I'm afraid he can only bow before young Master Murengxiu, said the Murengxiu clan's emissary with a smile. It's too early to be happy. Envoy Tuoba snorted disdainfully. Murengxiu. Even in the Tuoba family, where geniuses gathered, Tuobalai's strength was considered to be at the top. Murengxiu. But Murengxiu. How can someone like you who only knows how to run and hide be worthy of the Dragon Lady? Tuobalai said coldly. Murengxiu was like a slippery eel. Murengxiu was so slippery that Tuobalai couldn't use his strength. As long as I can defeat you. Murengxiu laughed. He didn't care about the marriage with the Dragon Lady. He was only here to stop Tuobalai. After all, he couldn't ask Murenu to stop Tuobalai. Did he want Murenu to marry the Dragon Lady? Haha, Murengxiu. Do you think you can restrain me with speed? Tuobalai said. The totem power in his body boiled again like a volcano erupting. A dragon roared and a totem spirit emerged from Tuobalai's body. It had a pair of wings on its back, and was covered in red scales. It roared to the sky. It's Tuobalai's other supreme totem, the red flame pterosaur. The Dragon Lady said solemnly. Dragon wings appear. Tuobalai roared. Flames surged behind his back, and a pair of red dragon wings materialized. With a flap of the dragon wings, Tuobalai's body shot toward Murengxiu like red lightning. Not good. Murengxiu's eyelids twitched. Once again, he summoned his second supreme totem, the black armored beast. The Wind Shadow Wolf focused on speed while the black-scaled beast had unparalleled defense. Seeing this, Tuobalai's eyes revealed a hint of mockery. Devil Ape Transformation. Tuobalai's tower-like figure grew even taller. Black hair even appeared on the surface of his body. A ruthless scarlet color surged in his eyes. It was as if he had transformed into a human-shaped demonic ape. Devil Ape Bone-Shattering Fist. With the acceleration brought by the dragon wings and the immense strength of the earth-shaking Devil Ape, the Devil Ape Bone-Shattering Fist was extremely powerful. The air was compressed and a sharp sonic boom resounded throughout the arena. Immovable King Armor. Murengxiu saw this and activated the black-scaled beast's power. Vigorous totem power gathered in front of him, and turned into a black shield that seemed to be able to defend against everything. Unfortunately, his opponent was Tuobalai. Boom. Tuobalai's fist landed on the immovable king armor. In an instant, Murengxiu felt a monstrous force pass through the immovable king armor, and into his body. Pfft. Murengxiu spat out a mouthful of blood. Tuobalai shouted coldly. Break. Boom. The immovable king armor was broken. Then, the fist landed on Murengxiu's chest without any obstruction. Murengxiu spat out another mouthful of blood. He retreated quickly and landed outside the arena. The entire arena was dead silent. Tuobalai's fist had shocked them. Even Murengxiu from the Murengxiu family had been defeated by this fist. I lost. Murengxiu's face was pale, and his body shook slightly. His situation was much better than the Stormy Wave Saint and the others. However, he was still severely injured and could not fight anymore. No one can stop Tuobalai anymore. Murengxiu's face was ghastly. He couldn't stop Tuobalai. When the two of them got married, the Tuoba family would be able to pull the Aqua tribe to the main war camp with this layer of relationship. By then, the peace faction led by the Muranxio family would be in a bad situation. If the Tuoba family were to win the Five Elements Temple's approval, the Muranxio family would suffer the heaviest blow. One wrong move and the whole game would be lost. Muranxio could not help but feel defeated when he thought of this. The messenger from the Muranxio family also had a ghastly expression. The patriarch of the Water tribe sighed. He had never wanted to join the pro-war faction. However, no one could stop Tuoba Lai now. Even Muranxio had been defeated. Among the younger generation, who else could compete with Tuoba Lai? Sigh. The dragon lady sighed bitterly and shook her head slightly. She still had a glimmer of hope for Muranxio. However, it seemed that Tuoba Lai's strength had far exceeded her expectations. Perhaps only this person beside her could help her. Thinking of this, the dragon lady could not help but turn her beautiful eyes to Yi Guchen beside her. Looking at the dragon lady's beautiful eyes, Yi Guchen's expression was calm. Since the dragon lady had agreed to help him enter the Five Elements Temple, Yi Guchen naturally had to be loyal to her. Leave it to me, Yi Guchen said and slowly stood up. The dragon lady's beautiful eyes shone with brilliance. At this moment, Tuoba Lai stood in the middle of the fighting ground. He was as sturdy as an iron tower and stood proudly. Who else? Tuoba Lai let out a long roar. His aura was terrifying and he looked insufferably arrogant. The surrounding Water tribe members, including the saints, shrunk their heads. Under such circumstances, no one dared to stand out and fight against Tuoba Lai. Me too. A faint voice rang out. It was not loud, but it seemed to spread throughout the entire fighting ground. For a moment, everyone looked towards the source of the voice. When they saw the ordinary-looking figure walking out, they could not help but be shocked. Chapter 536. Tuoba Lai had first defeated the Cloud River Saint Sun, then the Storm Wave Saint Sun. Now even Mulanxiu from the Mulan family had been defeated. He was in the limelight. That oppressive aura made all the saints and saintesses in the arena bow their heads, not daring to be in the limelight. At this time, who would dare to step forward? Wouldn't that be asking for trouble? It was precisely because of this that after hearing that voice, almost everyone in the arena cast their curious gazes over. They wanted to know who would dare to provoke Tuoba Lai at this time. However, when they saw the figure slowly walking towards the arena, the curiosity on their faces instantly turned into astonishment. If the person who spoke was a saint, it might be worth watching. However, the person who stood out now was someone no one had expected. Isn't that young man the dragon lady's subordinate? Why did he come out? I didn't feel the oppressive aura of a saint from him. He must be angry because of a beauty. After all, the dragon lady is very charming. But isn't he courting death by coming out now? The members of the Water tribe in the arena were whispering to each other. They were unfamiliar with Yi Guchen. The only impression they had was that he was very close to the dragon lady. However, Yi Guchen didn't reveal anything. Coupled with his ordinary appearance, it was too easy for people to overlook him. Who is that young man? The leader of the Water tribe frowned. Leader, that young man seems to be related to the dragon lady. He also has a rank 5 demonic beast. Yu Lang had some impression of Yi Guchen, so he spoke up. Oh, is that so? The leader of the Water tribe looked indifferent. Yi Guchen wasn't from the Water tribe, so he didn't care too much. Sigh, this young man is really reckless. You can't bring a rank 5 demonic beast in this kind of battle. Yu Lang shook his head, obviously thinking that Yi Guchen was relying on the rank 5 demonic beast. It's him? Envoy Tuoba also recognized Yi Guchen, and a playful smile appeared on his face. A few days ago, outside the Yunming Marsh, he was embarrassed because of Yi Guchen. Hey, are you serious? Tuoba Lai sneered when he saw Yi Guchen stepping onto the stage. As long as I'm here, you can't have Dragon Lady. Yi Guchen placed his hands behind his back and said calmly. It was as if he had the bearing of being unfazed even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of him. This sudden change in temperament caused some people to raise their eyebrows slightly. Dragon Lady's cheeks turned red. Yi Guchen's words were very overbearing. It was as if she was Yi Guchen's exclusive property. On one side of the battlefield, the Stormy Wave Saint was in a sorry state. When he saw the dragon lady's face suddenly turn red, extreme jealousy and anger welled up in his heart. He couldn't help but yell, "You little brat, you're overestimating yourself. Even I was defeated by Tuoba Lai." Do you think you can win? Do you want to lose your life in front of the dragoness? The stormy wave saint really couldn't stand the dragon lady's special treatment of Yi Guqin. He also couldn't understand how Yi Guqin was so powerful. The loser should shut up. Yi Guqin glanced at the stormy wave saint indifferently. "You." The stormy wave saint's face turned red. Dragon lady also looked at the stormy wave saint with extreme disappointment. How could the saint of her clan be so pathetic? It was fine if he lost, but he was still clamoring like a clown. Let's see how miserable you'll be later." The stormy wave saint clenched his fist and said. He had always thought of himself as extraordinary. Even if he lost to Tuoba Lai, he thought it was because Tuoba Lai was too strong and not because he was too weak. In the viewing platform, Shui Ruo clenched her fists tightly, worried for Yi Guqin. This battle couldn't have the help of a rank 5 monster, so Shui Ruo was very nervous. On the other hand, Mo Tao watched coldly from the side, quietly waiting to see Yi Guqin's miserable state. "Kid, since you took the initiative to come to me, then don't blame me for being merciless. You should know that you're not from the water tribe." Tuoba Lai's words had a deeper meaning, and his pair of scarlet eyes looked coldly at Yi Guqin. What he meant was that Yi Guqin wasn't from the water tribe. So even if he accidentally killed Yi Guqin, it didn't matter. The water tribe wouldn't pursue the matter. "Make your move." Yi Guqin clasped his hands behind his back, unwilling to say more. "Good kid." Seeing that Yi Guqin was still so indifferent, Tuoba Lai felt unhappy. He directly punched out, still using the same punch that defeated Mulanxiu. Dense murderous aura surrounded the tip of his fist, like a devil ape shaking the sky, and smashed towards Yi Guqin's face. Devil ape bone-shattering fist. Tuoba Lai is going to kill. Seeing this, the people in the fighting ring couldn't help but exclaim. If the punch landed on the face, with its terrifying strength, the head would explode like a watermelon. Yi Guqin was a little surprised when he felt the wind from the fist coming at him. Tuoba Lai and Tuoba Shang weren't that far apart. Especially after using the devil ape transformation. Tuoba Lai's strength was obviously stronger. However, that was all there was to it. Yi Guqin said as he stretched out his hand. It was simple, without any aura. In the eyes of the people, this action was no different from suicide. Ridiculous. Mo Tao sneered. Facing such a powerful person like Tuoba Lai, how could he treat him with such contempt? In the eyes of the people, wasn't he courting death? I thought you were something. Tuoba Lai's eyes were filled with mockery. It was as if he could see Yi Guqin's brain exploding in the next moment. Boom. Tuoba Lai's fist finally punched out. However, the scene of Yi Guqin's brain exploding did not happen. Yi Guqin blocked Tuoba Lai's punch with one hand. Then Yi Guqin exerted force on his wrist and twisted it. A wretched howl of anger mixed with pain suddenly rang out. However, the one who screamed wasn't Yi Guqin but Tuoba Lai. Everyone was dumbfounded. It was as if they were in the clouds and they couldn't figure out what was going on. Yi Guqin twisted his wrist and crushed all the bones in Tuoba Lai's arm that he used to punch Yi Guqin. Tuoba Lai retreated, and he was in so much pain that he broke out in cold sweat. Silence. It was as if there was a dead silence. The clan leader of the water tribe, Elder Yulong, envoy Tuoba, Shui Ruo, and Mo Tao. Everyone present had a stunned expression on their faces. This was because the scene in front of them had overturned everything they knew. Tuoba Lai, who was retreating, covered his injured arm with his other hand. His bones were almost completely broken. An extreme unwillingness and disbelief appeared on his face. Although that young man's figure was skinny, his strength caused a storm to rise in Tuoba Lai's heart. Even Tuoba Shang, who was the strongest in the Tuoba family, couldn't be compared to him after using the 4-beast golden body. However, he didn't know. Perfect physical body, indestructible diamond body, 5 totems, and the ancient god's secret art. Yi Guqin's physical body was almost invincible among martial artists of the same level. Competing with Yi Guchen in terms of physical body and strength was suicide. No, I don't believe it. How can I lose to you? Tuoba Lai roared. Since he couldn't win in terms of strength, he would use his totem power. He no longer held back and his totem power surged out. The earth-shaking demonic ape, flaming fiery dragon, and the third supreme totem appeared at the same time. Tuoba Lai was using his full strength now. He had fully displayed his strength as the Triple Crown champion. However, one punch, Yi Guchen said coldly. I only need one punch to defeat you. Chapter 537. Previously, Tuoba Lai had been so arrogant. He had sent the Cloud River Saint Sun and Stormy Wave Saint Sun flying with one punch. Even when facing Miranxiu, he had defeated her in a few moves. In the eyes of the crowd, he had established a domineering aura. But now, Yi Guchen had said that he would also defeat Tuoba Lai with one punch. This was even more shocking than when he had blocked Tuoba Lai's punch. However, Yi Guchen's performance just now had already stunned everyone present. Therefore, most of the people held their breaths as they watched the duel between the two. You are too arrogant. Tuoba Lai's eyes were bloodshot. He roared and activated the power of the demon ape transformation to the maximum. His muscular body grew taller again, and black hair grew all over his body. He looked like a real earth-shaking demon ape. Along with a cracking sound, Tuoba Lai's severed arm healed slightly for the time being. With the addition of the three supreme totems, Tuoba Lai's aura was much stronger than before. Even Miranxiu had a grave look on her face. If she were to face Tuoba Lai now, she would not be able to deal with him as easily as before. She would be defeated immediately. Die Brat! Tuoba Lai's totem power erupted like a volcano. The power of the three supreme totems was added to his punch as he smashed it toward Yi Guchen. This punch made Miranxiu and the other saints and saintesses of the water tribe change their expressions. They knew that if they were to face this punch, they would die immediately. Yi Guchen calmly looked at Tuoba Lai who was charging towards him. He could not casually take this punch. Yi Guchen took a step forward. With a loud bang, the ground shook. A surge of totem power that was much stronger than Tuoba Lai's exploded from his body. Although he had the wave illusion secret skill to cover it up, the power of the ancestor totem was still there. Even if it was not fully activated, it was still much stronger than an ordinary supreme totem. That's the wood elemental supreme totem. He's actually also a saint. Under the cover of the wave illusion secret technique, Yi Guchen's Azure Dragon totem transformed into an Azure Spirit Dragon Python. Among the supreme totems, it was considered an extremely powerful existence. All the members of the water tribe were shocked. They did not expect this ordinary-looking young man to be a holy son. Shui Ruo's mouth was wide open, clearly not expecting Yi Guchen to be a holy son. As for Mo Tao, he was also stunned on the spot, his eyes trembling. However, he still did not give up. After all, Yi Guchen had only summoned one supreme totem. Tuoba Lai had three. So what if you're the holy son? You can't even compare to me. Seeing Yi Guchen bring out a supreme totem, the shock in the Stormy Wave Saint's eyes dissipated, replaced by stubborn disdain. However, was that all? Boom. Yi Guchen took another step forward, and the second supreme totem also appeared. Double Crown King. Someone exclaimed in disbelief. Even the leader of the water tribe, Elder Yulong, and the others were shocked. If Yi Guchen was just an ordinary holy son, they would not be too concerned. However, a double crown king was different. It was obviously more important than an ordinary holy son. Mo Tao's face froze again. As for the Stormy Wave Saint, his disdainful smile froze. Just now, he still stubbornly believed that Yi Guchen was not as good as him. However, now Yi Guchen was also a double crown king, just like him. If he still disdained Yi Guchen, then what was he? However, the shock brought by Yi Guchen had yet to dissipate. Totem power surged in Yi Guchen's body again, and the third supreme totem appeared. Shock. It was no longer enough to describe everyone's feelings. Even the leader of the water tribe, and the others lost their composure. Tuoba Lai jumped up as if his butt was on fire. His voice was muffled and trembling as he said, How could he be a triple crown king like young master? A triple crown king. A double crown king was already considered outstanding among the barbarian holy sons. A triple crown king was a top-notch figure. He was second only to Tuobashang, and was the future seed of the barbarian race. No one in the arena had expected that this ordinary-looking young man would actually be a terrifying triple champion. Shui Ruo was already shocked to the extreme. The Triple Crown King had given her too much of a shock. Mo Tao was completely stunned, as if he had been petrified. He looked at Yi Guchen in a daze. As for the Stormy Wave Saint, he shook his head in a daze. No. Triple Crown King. How could it be? He did not believe that this ordinary-looking young man was a Triple Crown King who was stronger than him. However, this was the truth. It's about time. Yi Guchen said to himself as he felt the surging totem power in his body. The power of 3 totems was already enough. If he used more totems, it would be enough to attract the attention of the 5 Elements Temple. After adding the power of 3 totems, Yi Guchen's eyes shone brightly. He also punched towards Tuoba Lai. Tuoba Lai was also shocked by Yi Guchen's 3 totems. However, the arrow had already been knocked on the bow, and it had to be released. With his temper, he would not back down. Their fists collided. Boom. It was as if a mushroom cloud had exploded in the arena. A strong wind tore through the air and spread in all directions. Dust flew everywhere, and a miserable howl was heard again. No. It can't be. Mo Tao, the Stormy Wave Saint, Envoy Tuoba, and the others who had conflicts with Yi Guchen felt their hearts skip a beat. Although they did not want to think that way, from the sound, it did sound like. Sure enough, as the dust settled, everyone in the arena saw Tuoba Lai lying on the edge of the arena. His entire arm, which he used to punch out, was completely crippled. Blood flowed out from it non-stop. Compared to his previous arrogance, Tuoba Lai was now in a miserable state. Tuoba Lai lost. Mu Lanxiu rubbed his eyes. He felt as if he was dreaming. Tuoba Lai, who had defeated him, was now lying on the ground like a dead dog, panting heavily. Was this still the arrogant Tuoba Lai of the Tuoba family? In the arena, many of the Water Tribe members were dead silent. However, a voice that was as clear as a silver bell laughed. Yay! Brother Dugu won. The person who spoke was Shui Ruo. Her eyes were curved into crescents. She was very happy. This girl. Does she know what this battle means? Some of the Water Tribe members looked at Shui Ruo and could not help but feel ashamed. This was not a simple victory. It was related to the Tuoba family's plan. Moreover, the Triple Crown champion who had appeared out of nowhere would cause a great commotion in the barbarian tribe. After all, the person he had defeated was the famous Tuoba Lai of the Tuoba family. If the Quadruple Crown champion, Tuoba Shang, knew about it, what would his attitude be? Dragon Lady, who was sitting on the spectator stand, finally let out a long sigh of relief. Yi Guchen seemed to never disappoint. As for Mo Tao, the Stormy Wave Saint, and the others, their faces were completely stiff. They were so ashamed that they looked like clowns. Thinking about how they had looked down on Yi Guchen, the 2 of them felt cold sweat running down their backs. If Yi Guchen had been more calculative, they would have ended up in a worse state than Tuoba Lai. Chapter 538. They looked at Tuoba Lai, who was severely injured and in a sorry state. The entire arena was dead silent. They looked at Yi Guchen, and there was no longer any doubt and contempt in their eyes. The Triple Crown champion was not qualified to fight alongside the Dragon Lady. How many people in the barbarian tribe were qualified to do so? Moreover, the young Triple Crown champion was someone who could easily defeat Tuoba Lai. No wonder the Dragon Lady is so close to him. Even Tuoba Lai is no match for him. A member of the Sea Tribe exclaimed, "Where did the Triple Crown champion come from? Why have I never heard of him before?" Someone was puzzled. However, no matter what, Yi Guchen's figure was infinitely elevated in their eyes. He was second only to the Quadruple Crown champion, Tuoba Shang. Sigh, looks like I've misjudged him. Elder Yulong smiled bitterly. Faced with Tuoba Lai's oppression, The one who subdued him was not the holy son of the sea tribe, but Yi Guchen, who was ignored and scolded by him. This made Elder Yulong sigh. The expression of the clan leader of the sea tribe changed. However, when he thought of the close relationship between the dragon lady and Yi Guchen, his expression became more relaxed. Sure enough, there is always someone better than you. The patriarch of the water tribe smiled meaningfully. Messenger Tuoba's face was as black as the bottom of a pot. He was so arrogant before. He even dared to mock the clan leader of the sea tribe. However, Messenger Tuoba was now cowering like a quail. He was no longer as arrogant as before. In the arena, Tuoba Lai stood up slowly and stared at Yi Guchen. Who the hell are you? Tuoba Lai's voice almost popped out from between his teeth. I'm just a wandering barbarian, Yi Guchen said casually. A cold light flashed across his eyes. Yi Guchen was not a merciful person. He would not show mercy to his enemies. However, if he killed Tuoba Lai now, the Tuoba family would come to him immediately. In order to enter the Five Elements Temple and obtain the sacred medicine, Yi Guchen had to spare Tuoba Lai's life. Ah, a wandering barbarian. Tuoba Lai, actually lost to a wandering barbarian. Tuoba Lai clenched his teeth. But now that the dust had settled, there was nothing he could do, because the promise of the groom selection arena had already been set. No matter how powerful the Tuoba family was, they couldn't be so shameless. Tuoba Lai couldn't swallow his pride and go back on his word. Moreover, there were people from the Mulan family present. If Tuoba Lai didn't admit it, the Mulan family wouldn't just stand by and watch. Even if he didn't dare, Tuoba Lai could only coldly snort and walk off the stage. In the stands, Dragonessa's palms were sweating. After seeing Tuoba Lai back down, she finally let out a sigh of relief. If she had to serve Tuoba Lai in the future, it would be worse than killing her. For a moment, Dragon Lady looked at Yi Guchen with a strange light in her eyes. She knew that Yi Guchen had yet to display his true strength. He had only summoned 3 totems. If he summoned all 5 totems, Tuoba Lai wouldn't be able to withstand a single blow. He would explode and die. Haha, brother Tuoba, it seems like you and I are not fated to meet a beauty like Dragoness today. Mirengxiu laughed lightly. He was also glad that Yi Guchen had appeared out of nowhere. Otherwise, the Mulan family would be under a lot of pressure if the plan failed. To a certain extent, Yi Guchen had helped the Mulan family. Mirengxiu, it's too early for your Mulan family to be happy. This time, the door of the ancient god in the Five Elements Temple has opened once again. Let's see what the Mulan family has to fight with the Tuoba family. Tuoba Lai said coldly. This. Mirengxia's face changed slightly. His expression was uncertain. When Yi Guchen heard this, a ray of light flashed across his eyes. Door of the ancient god. Yi Guchen was slightly surprised. As someone who knew the secret of the ancient god and cultivated the ancient god tactics, Yi Guchen was naturally familiar with the ancient god. There was no doubt that the door of the ancient god was related to the ancient god. However, Yi Guchen knew too little about the Five Elements Temple. He calmed down and decided to ask Dragoness about the door of the ancient god in the future. When Tuoba Lai mentioned the door of the ancient god, the entire water tribe became silent. In their eyes, Tuoba Shang would naturally benefit the most from the opening of the door of the ancient god, if there were no accidents. After all, he was the #1 expert among the younger generation of the barbarian tribe. As for the 5-crown king that Yi Guchen had transformed into, the barbarian tribe did not include him because they did not know his identity. Mirengxia's face turned ugly. When cousin Tuoba Shang enters the door of the ancient god, and inherits the bloodline of the ancestors, your Mulan family. Tuoba Lai did not say anything else but revealed a cold smile. His words made Mirengxia's face turn even colder. Tuoba Lai glanced at him coldly before looking at Yi Guchen. The coldness in his eyes was so thick that it could not be dispersed. When I enter the door of the ancient god and obtain the opportunity, I might be able to defeat this kid, Tuoba Lai thought. Then, the Tuoba family left with their tails between their legs. Then, the Mulan family will take our leave too. Mirengxiu seemed to have something on his mind as he left. Then, there were only the water tribe members left in the fighting ring. The opening of the door of the ancient god had nothing to do with most of the water tribe members. At that moment, their attention was only on Yi Guqin. Many of the water tribe members' eyes were filled with excitement. Although Yi Guqin's appearance was very ordinary, compared to his strength, appearance was not very important. After all, the barbarian tribe was a tribe that worshipped the strong. Mo Tao's heart was dead and he no longer had the courage to resent Yi Guqin. After all, the gap between them was so big that it was hard to describe. Shui Ruo was genuinely happy for Yi Guqin. Then the groom selection ceremony is over. The final winner, Dugu Wubai, can marry the dragon lady, an elder of the water tribe announced. Regardless of Yi Guqin's identity, the Triple Crown King's strength was enough for the water tribe to rope him in. When the water tribe members heard that, they started to laugh and jeer. The dragon lady blushed. Although she had only asked for Yi Guqin's help, she was still a little embarrassed. When the turbulent wave saint saw the blushing dragon lady, his chest was about to explode. However, when he thought of Yi Guqin's terrifying punch that suppressed Tuobalai, his anger was extinguished. A conceited person like him only knew how to bully the weak and fear the strong. Looking at the cheers of the crowd, Yi Guqin's expression was calm. This was only a deal between him and the dragon lady. It was impossible for them to form a marriage alliance. However, although that was what he thought, the water tribe members did not think so. The water tribe members moved quickly. In just a short while, they had even prepared the bridal chamber for the marriage alliance. If not for the dragon lady's explanation, the wedding banquet would have already started. In the dead of night, the dragon lady's residence had already been decorated into a bridal chamber. The dragon lady sat quietly in her room, feeling a little disappointed. Just then, the door was pushed open. Yi Guqin, dressed in a black robe, walked in calmly. For some reason, the dragon lady's heart trembled. It can't be. Could it be that Yi Guqin is really interested in me? What should I do? Reject him? The dragon lady was very nervous. Her snow-white face blushed. Yi Guqin looked at the dragon lady and said, "There's no time to lose. Let's begin." This sudden? The dragon lady stuttered. "What else? Aren't you very impatient?" Yi Guqin looked at the dragon lady strangely. I'm not that impatient." The dragon lady blushed and lowered her head slightly. She admitted that she had some feelings for Yi Guqin, but it was not to that extent. "I see." Yi Guqin sighed. The dragon lady saw this and said anxiously, "It's not that I can't, but can you be gentler?" Yi Guqin looked at the dragon lady in confusion. "I don't know much about this kind of thing. I still need you to guide me," Yi Guqin said. "What, still need me to do it? It's my first time too." The dragon lady's voice was hoarse. She rolled her eyes at Yi Guqin. "Don't you know how to transform a totem? Then how can I help you?" Yi Guqin frowned. The dragon lady's face froze. The atmosphere became awkward. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.